Good morning, this is Newsroom. Your top stories this hour. Former President Jacob Zuma has his day in court for graft charges related to the arms deal.
Meanwhile, security is tight in and around the Durban High Court as thousands are expected to gather in support of Zuma.
Also coming up this hour, mourners continue to flock to the late Winnie Madikizela-Mandela home to pay their last respects.
And EFF leader Julius Malema is back in court for allegedly inciting supporters to occupy land.
It often feels like there's 6 rounds, with how the weekend grind is, and well, really any major. So this, I feel like I'm kind of 1 round down out of 6, and so I'm not getting ahead of myself. It's just, it was a really good start.
World number 4 Jordan Spieth is in the lead after the first round of the year's first major, the Masters at Augusta.
It is 9 a.m. Central African time, coming to you live from Johannesburg. This is Newsroom on SABC. I'm Simphiwe Ngona. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a big day today, not only for South African political space, but of course for former President Jacob Zuma as he appears in court on corruption charges. And to help us dissect the bolts and the nuts of this case, I'll be joined by Aldrin Sampear, our specialist political reporter, who's been following that story for quite a while now. A very good morning to you. Quite a big day for Zuma, and apparently his 9 lives have run out.
Well, certainly, it's been 9 years in coming since the NPA dropped those charges against the former president back in 2009, just before the elections, and now 9 years later, on the very same day that those charges were dropped, on the 6th of April, he will appear in court.
Indeed, we'll have more on that. We'll also be joined by Professor Susan Boyson to help us dissect that particular case. I'm also joined by our sports reporter or a sports presenter, Nkosazana Valen. Very good morning to you, Nkosazana. Welcome.
Simphiwe, thank you very much. Good morning to you, Aldrin. Good morning to the both of you. So a big day politically and lots to look forward to when it comes to the world of sport. I look forward to bringing you the latest here on Newsroom at 1:45 the top of the hour. Simphiwe is standing by to bring you your top story.
Many thanks to Valen. We'll certainly have at about 45 minutes. But first, the top story. Former President Jacob Zuma's corruption case is in court this morning. The former statesman faces 16 charges of corruption, money laundering and racketeering. A throng of journalists is already camping outside court to capture any activity in and around the Durban High Court. Security has also been tightened as hundreds of supporters of the former president gather ahead of his appearance this morning.
Continue to visit the home of the late anti-apartheid struggle icon Winnie Madikizela-Mandela in Soweto, south of Johannesburg. Her death on Monday saw political leaders and prominent business personalities and members of the clergy converging at the home to offer their condolences. The country is marking 10 days of mourning for the struggle icon, with events planned across the country and in many parts of the world. Well, our reporter Mangoba Mkunu joins us from Orlando West, and gives us an update with the latest of what's currently happening at Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's home this morning. A very good morning to you, Mangoba. Just quickly give us an update. Who are some of the mourners who have been making their way through to the house?
Well, Aldrin, certainly it's very quiet at this stage outside the home.
Well, we seem to have lost the signal there with Mangoba. We'll try to re-establish that signal. I have to say, Simphiwe, I've been there, I think, for about 2-3 days, and every person who comes out of that house speaks about this struggle icon who's literally fought in the face of adversity, stood up to the apartheid regime and said, not in my name and not in the name of the black people that I support and the black people that I fight for.
Indeed, indeed. A hero has indeed fallen, and I do understand that we've already re-established connection with Mangoba Mkhunu outside the home of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, and we cross to him right now. A very good morning to you, Mangoba. Thank you so much for joining us. What's happening now?
Well, it's still very quiet outside the home of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela this morning, and this is largely due to the fact that the family as well as the ANC had issued a statement last night requesting mourners who come here outside the house to make their way here from 11 a.m. this morning up until 9 p.m. And of course, you've seen over the past few days how many mourners have come outside this family, and they've been coming since the early hours of the morning and leaving after midnight. And so the family has really issued a statement asking that it be given some time to reflect and also to get much needed rest as they prepare for the funeral service of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And of course, also today, marking that day of the 10-day program that the ANC had put forward to say that they're going to commemorate the life of Mama Madikizela-Mandela. And of course, we know today that the focus shifts to Pretoria, where it's expected that commemoration for the struggle icon and apartheid activist Solomon Mahlangu will be held there today. You'll recall that Solomon Mahlangu on this day in 1979 was hanged in the central prison in Pretoria in the gallows there. And so we expect ANC leaders to go to pay their respects there at the gallows, as well as to lay wreaths at his graveside, and also to visit the family of Solomon Mahlangu, where also a memorial lecture will also be taking place. And of course, we've heard that struggle veterans will also be making their way here to the home of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela later on to also come and pay their tribute. Of course, joining the chorus of other leaders as well as other political parties who have also been making their way here to pay their respects to the family.
Mangoba, we know that there is now confirmation that the memorial service will be taking place at Orlando Stadium, as well as the funeral that will be taking place. Just in terms of the memorial service, do we know as yet who are some of those prominent mourners who will be making their way through to that memorial service?
Well, Aldrin, I didn't quite hear your question at the end there, but what I do know is that there were negotiations between the family as well as the ANC for that memorial to be moved from the Regina Mundi church, where it was originally have expected to take place. And of course, the issue there being around the issue of space. And of course, you know that Mama was well loved by many, and so you'll know that many people want, of course, to be part of that memorial service. So that confirmation, as you say, coming through to say that it will now be held at Orlando Stadium. But of course, all the logistics at this point are yet to be shared by the ANC. So at this stage, all we know is that it is definitely going to be held at the Orlando Stadium.
Well, there you have it from Mangoba Mkhunu joining us all the way from Soweto, where Mam Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's home, where mourners have been making their way all the way through to their house to pay their last respects. And yes, over the next couple of days, it's been indicated the next 10 days will be the 10 days of mourning that has been declared by the president. Also messages of support coming across from various countries, as well as various leaders across the world paying their respects to Mam Winnie Madikizela-Mandela.
From one fallen struggle icon to the other, Deputy President David Mabuza, alongside cabinet ministers and their deputies and members of the Solomon Mahlangu's family, will take the 52 steps to the gallows at Kgosi Mampuru Second Correctional Facility in Pretoria today in commemoration of Mahlangu's execution there 39 years ago. Mahlangu was an Umkhonto Wesizwe soldier who was hanged by the apartheid government on this day in 1979 at what was then known as the Pretoria Central Prison. The Deputy President has described Mahlangu and other freedom fighters as individuals who were driven into the struggle for liberation and by the love of their country.
Well, let's give you now live visuals coming straight out of Durban, outside the Durban High Court, where former President Jacob Zuma is expected to appear. Of course, security is tight outside that courtroom. There you have visuals of ANC members and supporters quite clearly defying an order that has come from the ANC, the ANC's National Executive Committee, that said that no ANC member must be supporting the former president in the ANC regalia. The ANC must not be seen to be supporting the former president as he faces these corruption charges.
And indeed, as one political reporter, Aldrin, has put it, the tectonic plates have indeed shifted. Who would have thought that President Jacob, or rather former President Jacob Zuma, would appear in court to face corruption charges that he's been apparently dodging for the past 9 years? Who would have thought the Guptas might be on the run today? So indeed, so much is happening politically, and interesting times to be alive.
Actually, looking at these visuals are quite reminiscent of what happened back in 2008, 2009, when the president was facing the similar charges, and outside the Durban High Court, there were similar protests, but there was a similar protest of a man who had just been elected the president of the ANC and who was to become the president of the country later in the year, as the general elections were coming along. But now he is a man who is the former head of state. He's not in the highest office in the land anymore, but yet he still enjoys the support. Over the couple of weeks heading up to the 6th of April, he has been doing the campaigning on behalf of the ANC, but also trying to make sure that he gets supporters to come out in the numbers and support him outside the Durban High Court.
And another interesting observation is that former President Jacob Zuma and Winnie Madikizela-Mandela are in the spotlight in 1 week. I mean, former President Jacob Zuma is appearing in court on corruption charges in the same week that South Africa and the rest of the world are mourning the death of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And about the ban of ANC regalia, quite interestingly, during Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's one of the many trials that she faced, one of the prosecutors during that particular trial, they asked her, why is she wearing regalia of a banned political party? Remember that at the time ANC was banned, and she responded by saying that out of the limited rights I have in this country, I still have a right to my wardrobe. Now this speaks to the ban of the ANC, of Jacob Zuma supporters who've been banned not to wear any ANC regalia. I mean, this comes to mind. That particular statement that Winnie Madikizela-Mandela made to the right of the wardrobe comes to mind. Very, very interesting.
Well, joining us now in studio is Professor Susan Boyson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's first start with that. This decision that has been taken by the ANC's NEC, saying that do not wear ANC colours, ANC regalia, on the 6th of April when the former president appears in court, and quite openly they're being defied.
Yes, to quite some extent there. Although I think it's very important to draw the differentiation between what happened, for example, in a time of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela wearing that in his act of resistance to an apartheid state, in furtherance of that brand, the identity of the ANC as a resistance movement then, and what is happening today. Today there's a struggle for the new, so-called new perhaps, new dawn, etc., ANC under Cyril Ramaphosa to emerge. And the NEC or the ANC is unambiguously in favor of that, saying don't identify so publicly the ANC or in any way the ANC on this day, on this type of occasion, with the legal proceedings happening there. So it's a very different political situation in a way that is a group. We still have to see the exact numbers. We know by recruitment, mobilization before, it is marginal, previously largely unknown business organizations, civil society organizations that have been associated, for example, with Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's election campaign, radical economic transformation, brand, fusing defense of Jacob Zuma now with ideological principles. And that is the type of civil society organization that we see emerging here. And it would be very important for the ANC and the main body of the ANC under Cyril Ramaphosa to keep maintaining that distance between themselves and Jacob Zuma here, because it is a phase of former president being prosecuted on long outstanding corruption and other charges.
What do you make of, what do you make of the defiance itself? this defiance, for instance, the ANC Women's League is a structure of the party, but the ANC Women's League's leadership has come out and said that we'd already taken a decision that we will support the former president when he faces these corruption charges, and the 6th of April is the day that he appears in court, and we will be there. We know it's the same ANC Women's League that had also defied the previous NEC when the previous NEC said, let's not announce or pronounce on who your preferred candidate will be to succeed the former president, President Jacob Zuma. Of course, they announced that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. I wonder whether this speaks to ill discipline within the party and whether they now feel that they are emboldened within the party.
Well, probably a little bit of all of the above. And, you know, they are staying true to the course they've been on for quite a while. But the point is now they are, as a formal structure of the ANC, resisting against the National Executive Committee general directive. And they could very well be disciplined there, or at least reprimanded. I don't think the NEC could get around to not doing that. But it is an act of resistance. Previously, it was just the KZN Women's League who said they would go there and not the formal top-level structures of the ANC. So, and that is kind of a challenge to the Ramaphosa ANC. Now, they probably know the Ramaphosa ANC is still on slightly fragile grounds as to who has the exact upper hand in the organization and to what extent. Gradually, since Nasrec December last year, the power figures have been tumbling in favor of, the still remaining ones, tumbling in favor of the Ramaphosa side of the ANC as well. But today is a certain benchmark that will show the extent to which Ramaphosa has been consolidating his position in the ANC.
Okay, let's now see whether we can connect with DA member as well as the City of Cape Town's Mayor, Patricia de Lille, who has been fighting this matter since she was in the previous party, the PAC. I hope she can join us now. Mayor Patricia de Lille, can you hear me? It's Aldrin St-Pierre. We're coming live to you from Auckland Park. It has been 9 years since the NPA took the decision to drop the charges. What do you make of this decision now, that eventually it's happening, that the former president, President Jacob Zuma, is now appearing in the Durban High Court to face these charges?
Yes, it is also almost 20 years ago, on the 9th of September 1999, when I went to Parliament and asked for an investigation into the arms deal. And President Zuma, or former President Zuma, has always said that he would like to have his day in court, and the day has finally arrived. Although very late, because I think South Africans, we wanted to see an earlier prosecution, and we could have saved South Africa a lot of money because we wasted millions of rands on the Sariti Commission. The Sariti Commission had a predetermined outcome that there's no evidence. We all went there, Terry Crawford Brown, myself, Feinstein, all of us. And in the end, they simply just said there's no evidence. So now, for the first time, in an open court of law, Jacob Zuma will be able to state his side of the case.
I guess the other thing about the Sariti Commission is that how many have asked the question that how was it possible for the former ANC chief whip in Parliament, Tony Ngeni, to be found guilty on charges of on charges relating to corruption, but on the other hand, you find that the Sariti Commission itself didn't find any wrongdoing in the Arms Deal Commission.
That is exactly the point. You know, what was then dubbed the de Lille dossier contained a lot of allegations of corruption against many people in South Africa. Out of that de Lille document or dossier, Tony Ngeni was found guilty, Shabir Sheikh was found guilty, and now, of course, in terms of the same document, Jacob Zuma is appearing before a court of law. In terms of people that have received discounted cars from the arms supplier, there are many more, at least 29 more, who were never charged, who were never prosecuted. And so in a way, if you look at, you know, Tony Ngeni, Shabir Sheikh, Jacob Zuma now, you know, the four guys, but there were many more behind this. And that is why I've always asked and insisted that all the allegations contained in the Delil dossier must be investigated.
There had been obviously a resistance at the time when you came up with the Delil dossier. And I wonder, though, so many years later, why the ANC seems to be playing along. Because at some point, they were resisting this investigation into the Arms Deal Commission, rather into the Arms Deal inquiry.
Yes, I sometimes, you know, especially now that they've charged Jacob Zuma, just go back and read some of the debates in Parliament in Hansard. You know, the report where they had a public protector, the Auditor General, all of the three Chapter 9 institutions also did an investigation. And, you know, you look at all the sanitized versions that were presented during those years so as not to admit that, in fact, there was corruption during the arms deal. So hopefully now we will be able to look even past Jacob Zuma and start looking at prosecuting the other people that were alleged to be involved. Some of them got away with millions. And we must do something to recover some of that stolen money that belongs to the taxpayers of South Africa.
At the time of compiling this dossier, when you handed over this dossier, you yourself faced death threats.
Oh, yes, you know, I always question why me, why did people choose me to give the information to. But soon after that day, in September of 1999, I really became very isolated. You know, I was called names. I think the worst for me when I was called unpatriotic. And when in fact, you know, I was really just trying to assist government to root out the bad apples, the corrupt ones within government. And when I got the death threats, at least, you know, there were a group of us together that, including Judge Willem Heath, Feinstein, where we could come, and Gavin Woods also, you know, we always used to come together as that group and work together to get us through those difficult times. It was only until the September 2001 when the Auditor General indeed confirmed that there were some allegations of corruption, things people didn't follow due process, that we started to turn the corner. But before that, it was really 2 years of hell.
Well, what you're seeing now on your screens are live visuals of the former president, President Jacob Zuma, sitting there in the Durban High Court, where he is to face the 16 charges that are on the 18-charge indictment. As it has been indicated that President Jacob Zuma, the former president, has made some representations to the NPA, but the NPA insisting that despite those representations that have been made, which also includes issues around whether the former president, whether there has been political meddling in the former president's prosecution or attempts to prosecute him, whether there was merits to it. And Sean Abrams, the man who was appointed by Jacob Zuma about 3 years ago to lead that institution, then said that despite these representations that you've given us, we are going ahead and we will charge you. You will be facing 16 charges. I think the lady there sitting next to him is a representative of the Tint company. Remember, the Tint is also a co-accused in this matter, and that's the reason that you have her sitting there. She will be representing Tint being a co-accused in this matter. Mayor Patricia de Lille, just quickly as well, if we still have you on the line, where do you see this matter end? Do you think that there will be some sort of finality close by, considering that President Jacob Zuma, the former president, has always taken on the Stalingrad approach? You fight in every corner, you fight in every street, you fight in every house, you fight in every room.
I think that the victory for South Africa, what we are displaying here today, is that we are all equal before the law. It doesn't matter where you are president or whoever, that we subject to the laws and the constitution of this country. And that also, for those corrupt people who are still stealing from government today, who are stealing from the poor, It's sending out a strong message that you will be caught one day and you will be charged and you will be sent to jail, because we are trying to deal with the scourge of corruption. And this is where the trial of Jacob Zuma is going to assist us in the country to build that culture that corruption is not acceptable.
The trial is something else, because this is the point that President Jacob Zuma, or former President Jacob Zuma, and his council has already indicated that they are going to challenge this decision by the NPA to reinstate the charges. So there is another cycle coming up, and that's the cycle of challenging this decision. So we're going to go to a high court, we're going to go to the Supreme Court, and possibly to the Constitutional Court again. So it's the same thing over and over again.
Well, you know what? I think the difference this time around is that as the taxpayers of South Africa, we footed the legal bill. We paid for everything. This time around, if this case needs to be dragged out again, going through it, of course, it's also the right of Jacob Zuma to follow all the options open to him. But this time around, he will have to pay out of his pocket. And as the taxpayers, we are not going to be billed for those legal bills.
Actually, that doesn't seem to be the case, because remember, it was your own party that asked questions to the President Cyril Ramaphosa, about President Jacob Zuma's legal bills. And he said, according to the agreement that has been signed between former President Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma, it says that the former President Jacob Zuma's legal costs will be covered by the state attorney, because at the time of these allegations, he was still an MEC in KwaZulu-Natal.
I think there is a qualification to that agreement, and that is that if he is found guilty, then he must repay all of that money. But even the legality of the actual agreement is in question now, whether in fact legislation makes provision for that kind of agreement. And so if he's found guilty, he has to repay the money of the taxpayers.
Patricia de Lille, just like you to stand by quickly. I just quickly want to bring in a political analyst, Susan Boyson, who's also joining us in studio, speaking about the issue around footing former President Jacob Zuma's bill. This has been a huge issue. Of course, the DA is now challenging this in court. Where do you see this end?
Yes, you know, unless this little golden tap of free supply of state funds for legal defenses and often frivolous postponements, applications for review, unless that little tap is closed off, we can be in for another good decade of legal proceedings and court cases around Jacob Zuma being drawn out. And some people have also suggested that the finality on who pays and to what extent might be one of the big issues on which the Zuma's team in court today, in this historical scene that we see now with Zuma having his day in court, even if it could be a few minutes, unless we get finality of that. And that can be one of the reasons why the Zuma team could be requesting for a postponement and we'll see a further delay in these proceedings.
What impact do you think, if any, does this then does it then create a dent in brand ANC if the current president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, continues to foot the bill of the former president, considering that the NEC has already taken a decision that let's distance ourselves and let's not be seen to be endorsing this and former President Jacob Zuma as he faces these corruption charges?
Yes, given how long these proceedings and sequences of court cases can still be drawn out, I think Cyril Ramaphosa and the so-called new ANC has got no choice but to put a clearer differentiation between their efforts to promote clean governance, eliminate corruption, and just continuously, freely supplying these funds for legal defenses, because we know when the day comes when Zuma has to possibly repay, he could very well plead poverty.
Well, still continuing with the rolling coverage of former President Jacob Zuma's court appearance. It is his first court appearance in about 9 years since the charges have been dropped against him. Of course, as we indicated, it has been a Stalingrad approach. You fight in every corner, you fight in every street, as his counsel, Kemp J. Kemp, once said. Patricia de Lille, let me just quickly bring you in here. The NPA is indicating that it has about 207 witnesses on its witness list, but the strange thing for me is that when you look at the Shabir Sheikh case, there was someone on the Shabir Sheikh case who was a key witness, and that person is Zweli Mkhize, who's now the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. And one of the strange things that I find is that why isn't he on this 207 list of witnesses? What do you make of this?
Well, I've seen that only this morning that they've announced who's going to lead the prosecution, Billy Downer. And I'm sure he was also the lead prosecutor in the Shabir Sheikh case in Durban. And hopefully with him leading that, whoever drew up the list of witnesses, I'm sure that Mr. Billy Downer will make sure that if Mr. Mkhize is needed in the trial, that he does come out and give his evidence to. I think it's early days. Like you said earlier on, we might be spending more time now to question whether it was legal or not to reinstate the charges before we actually get to the real substantive issues.
Yeah, and of course, at the time, the prosecution did say or make the argument in the Shabir Sheikh case that there was a generally corrupt relationship between Jacob Zuma and Shabir Sheikh.
Yes, certainly Judge Squires at the time came to that conclusion. And the one thing that happened in Shabir Sheikh's case was that he then went on after the Durban High Court to go to the Supreme Court of Appeal, where he also lost. From there, he proceeded to go to the Constitutional Court, where he also lost. So the Constitutional Court being the highest court in the land, and having found him guilty on those charges, I'm almost certain that when these charges are tested against Jacob Zuma, that the charges will also stick to him.
Okay, unfortunately,
just think the law must take its course.
We have to cut you there. The court is in session. It's all rise, and there is the judge. Let's listen in.
My Lord, I call the matter of defend Jacob Zuma and another.
May it please the court, my lord, I appear for the state, together with my learned colleagues, Mrs. Kutsia and Mr. Matendra.
Thank you, Mr. Bono. I appear for accused number one, Mr. Zuma.
My lord, my name's Anton Katz. I'm from the Cape Bar. I'm here for the second accused witness, Adikar.
May it please the court, my lord.
Yes, Mr.
Might I just place some matters on record? First of all, my lord, this is in essence the continuance of a case which was on this court's roll in 2009 and which was withdrawn. It was discontinued by the NPA. Following the court's judgment, the two courts' judgments, the full bench of the North Gauteng High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal in Zuma and another Zuma in the appeal court versus the NDPP and the DA, which is 2018-1 SA 200 in the Supreme Court of Appeal. Following that court judgment, this matter was re-enrolled, and this is the first appearance of the re-enrolled matter. My lord, the accused come to this court today by way of summons, which were the two sets of summonses were served on the accused by means of service on the attorneys by agreement, and we've informed your lordship that the time taken for the summons was slightly shorter than the prescribed periods. No point will be made of that. We all agreed we're properly before the court and the accused are properly here before the court. My lord, in essence, the state is ready to continue the trial, is ready to recommence the trial. There are a number of preliminary issues which first have to be attended to. Firstly, is that the state has to provide the accused with copies of the docket, what is commonly referred to as the further particulars. That we have agreed with my learned friends will be done very, very shortly. Electronic copies of the docket will be provided, as is usual in these sorts of cases. And secondly, my lord, what needs to be sorted out is the question of a trial date. As we mentioned to your lordship in chambers, the role planners in the DPP's office here in Durban have indicated to me that the rolls are open for trial from the 12th of November. The DPP has mentioned this to the Judge President. Your Lordship is aware of it. So as far as the state is concerned, we could start the trial on the 12th of November. But there are other issues which I'll now inform Your Lordship about. Firstly, by agreement between the state and our learned friends for accused numbers 1 and 2, we will ask Your Lordship to postpone this matter to the 8th of June as the next provisional date, pending the matters which I will now inform Your Lordship about. So there's no fight about the nature of the adjournment and the date of the adjournment. The purpose of the adjournment is twofold in principle. Firstly, in respect of accused number 1, Mr. Zuma, we've been informed by our learned friends for Mr. Zuma that he wishes to bring a review application concerning the decision to prosecute him again. And in that respect, we've been informed, and after discussions between us, that they hope to finalize the review papers by the middle of May, by the 15th of May. But we will sort that out between the parties as the time goes on. There's also been mention that there might, depending on the nature of depending on the result, there might be further applications for permanent stay, etc. Those issues are not being addressed now. That is as regards accused number 1, Mr. Zuma. As far as the application of accused number 2 is concerned, might I just mention that accused number 2, rather unusually, is only a corporation. It is the company Thales South Africa, Pty Limited, as represented by Ms. Christine Gourier. And my Lord, I should also just mention that by agreement between the parties, she has been appointed as the company's representative, accused number 2's representative. She is French. She understands English. She doesn't require an interpreter. And she does reside in France. So we've all agreed that she will attend the various court appearances as necessary, but the state obviously has no problem with her traveling to and from our country and back to her place of residence in France. So I place that on record. Now, as far as accused number 2, Thales South Africa, is concerned, they have informed me that they wish to make representations to the DPP. So again, by mutual arrangement between the parties, we have agreed that they will make these representations as expeditiously as possible, and the parties aim to have an answer relating to the representations by the next adjournment on the 8th of June. My learned friends and I have discussed a timetable as to when the various stages of representations will be directed to us, and hopefully and certainly also by the end of May, if not earlier, we will have hoped to have received the representations in their final form so that we can inform the court on the 8th of June, hopefully again, what the answer is. My Lord, I think that is everything I wish to say relating to the reasons for the adjournment and what the party's attitude is. The final matter I should just mention is that there is, to our knowledge, a Western Cape High Court application which in some way is aimed to affect the current proceedings. There's an application in the Western Cape High Court by a body styling itself, and I quote, these words don't come from me, my Lord. The body is called the SA Natives Forum, and the respondents in that matter are various parties, including the NPA and the NDPP, and that seeks to interfere with the further conduct of this trial before your Lordship now. In this, the attitude of the parties in this court, and that includes, I think, my learned friends also, is that that matter has no bearing on the proceedings currently before your Lordship. The NPA and the LEPP are opposing that matter. I understand that accused number 1, inasmuch as he might be a respondent, has abided or intends abiding. So, as between the parties before your Lordship, there's no issue relating to that other case. So these proceedings will continue without regard to to the pending proceedings in the Cape Town Court, and we as the state naturally hope that that those proceedings will be dismissed, that the application will be dismissed, and that is our attitude. So. So, my Lord, yes, after checking with my learned colleagues, I think that is all I wish to address you on. And then our application is that, by agreement between the parties, the matter be postponed to the 8th of June as a provisional date for the reasons which I've given your Lordship. Unless the Court wishes to hear me on any other aspect, that would be the state's application. That's please the Court.
Accused number one.
Thank you, my Lord. My Lord, we confirm our agreement to the adjournment to the 8th of June 2018 as a provisional date. In relation to all other matters, my Lord, we say that our position remains fully reserved. There will be an application to challenge the legitimacy of the prosecution that we've spoken about with my learned friend Mr. Downer about dates and how that will be dealt with. Of course, on the 8th of June, everyone will be in a better position to work out where the matter proceeds from there. And then, my Lord, the reference to trial and the 12th of November that was suggested, my Lord, that is really a matter which will have to be discussed on the next occasion. So for now, we just record that we're not agreeing to any subsequent enrollment until we hear on the 8th of June when the matter is reassessed. That is our position, my Lord. Thank you.
My Lord, accused number 2 has nothing to add to that which was put on record by Mr. Downer.
My Lord, might I just say finally and just remind the Court that both accused, having been summoned to this Court, are on warning in the colloquial terms, and I would ask that the Court then warn the accused to appear on the 8th of June. Bail conditions and further conditions relating to their release do not apply in cases such as this where the accused are summoned to court, as indeed they were in 2007. May it please the Court.
Background in this matter has been outlined by counsel for the state, and it seems as if the defense is also in agreement with the submissions made on behalf of the state regarding the future conduct of this matter. For the reasons advanced by counsel for the state in agreement with the defense, this matter is adjourned to the 8th of June 2018, which is a provisional date, and the two accused before court, having been summoned to appear before this court, are released on bail. Sorry, are released on warning, rather. Thank you.
No, we just said you were wanting that. Boss, we remain up until later. No, we remain.
Well, there you have it, visuals coming straight out of the Durban High Court. Breaking news in, as expected, the case was a short appearance. The case now postponed to the 8th of June. The prosecution also indicating that they would have been ready on the 12th of November to continue with the trial date, or to start off with the trial date and prosecute former President Jacob Zuma and his co-accused Tint, the French arms company. I'm sitting here with Susan Boyson, political analyst. It's quite extraordinary that you have a case where you have Billy Downer, the prosecutor standing in court and then saying accused number one. It is really, really extraordinary, because the case is also the state versus Jacob Zuma, the state versus the former head of state.
Yes, this is a crucial moment in this long saga of the arms deal charges and such widespread accusations, allegations and suspicions of corruption almost coming to a point. And we, at least at this stage, the big change today is we see a specific provisional date, and then possibility of long down the line, but November this year. Of course, much water can flow into the ocean. There could be changes. Some of the reasons why we've got this postponement is that there needs to be finality on review applications, and even, although Billy Downer emphasized not relevant to the current trial, the application for a permanent stay of execution. So it is not as if Jacob Zuma, former president, now accused number one, is yet rolling over and say, I am here to listen to the charges being leveled against me. The usual tricks of postponements and applications and appeals are still going to unfold.
Just looking at the president, the former president's demeanor there in that dock, in the accused box, sitting next to this representative from the arms company Tint, what do you make of it?
There was, up to the last moment when they were adjourning there, a very brief friendly word from Zuma to the Thali's representative, but otherwise absolutely no contact between them. Although it seems that neither of them had much sleep in the course of the night, because Jacob Zuma was yawning and she was rubbing her eyes in a very tired way at one point. But otherwise, zero communication. They definitely, and they probably had not met before.
And speaking about the postponement, of course, now we've just heard from Billy Downer, the prosecutor, indicating that the French arms company Tint will also be making its application for a review. They are wanting to submit a representation, rather, to the NDPP, Sean Abrams, why they should not be cited in this matter.
Yes, that could really further complicate the whole case to quite an extent, and it will probably be a very technical, very legalistic argument, but it will be very interesting to see how they can possibly claim not to be cited there. We again have the Shabir Sheikh case 2005 and before that to go by, in which Zuma's name was cited, as you mentioned earlier, specifically 471 times in Hilary Squire's judgment there. And to disentangle that will, it seems, an incredible allegation to just say that they should not be linked. The interesting details must unfold.
And one other big story for the day is that EFF leader Julius Malema is, of course, expected to appear again at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, and he's facing charges of contravening the Rhetoric Assembly Act of 1956 for allegedly inciting his supporters to occupy land. Now, in 2014, he allegedly urged party members to occupy land, saying that it belonged to the black people of South Africa. Now, his legal team says the Rhetoric Assembly Act is unconstitutional. During previous court appearances in Bloemfontein, he enjoyed support of hundreds and is expected to address supporters outside of the court.
Well, it's certainly extraordinary, Simpiwe, that you have the former ANC Youth League leader, who has been a staunch supporter of former President Jacob Zuma, who helped this man ascend to power, who at the time was also outside the Durban High Court, and who said that there is this political onslaught against the man who was going to become president, also appearing in a court matter, but in a separate court case.
Yes.
At the same time, at the same day.
At the same time, the same day.
Yes, and in a week that the former icon closely associated with the late Julius Malema passed away.
Well, let's just quickly bring in Terry Crawford Brown, who's also known as one of the arms deal whistleblowers. Mr. Terry Crawford Brown, just listening into the postponement that has been made. But first of all, let's first start with actually seeing the former president, Jacob Zuma, in person, sitting in that dock as accused number one.
Thank you. It's been a long, long time in coming. I'm delighted, obviously, that at last we're getting somewhere. I hope the postponement is not a harbinger of more and more stalling, which sadly I believe has indicated a maluse of the Constitution that requires constitutional issues to be held without delay. We've seen 20 years of delays and stalling, and I hope this is not a further means of stalling.
Well, we're going to come back to you now, just in a short while, Mr. Terry Crawford Brown. Let's just quickly go back to Durban, outside the High Court, where you expect the former president, President Jacob Zuma, to be addressing the supporters, those who have come out in their numbers. As you can see, visuals there outside the Durban High Court, quite tight security. These are members and supporters of the ANC, who have certainly defied the party's National Executive Committee that has taken a decision in its last NEC that no ANC regalia should be used. But it did say that those members and supporters of the ANC and members, I guess, supporters of former President Jacob Zuma can be outside court and they can support the party, but what they mustn't do is wear the ANC colours. There you have it, tight security outside the Durban High Court. For me, it's quite extraordinary watching these visuals, because it's almost like it's the same visuals that I saw back in 2009. Political analyst Susan Boyson here in studio as well.
Yes, but I sense a very big difference too. It is not that further. It is a totally different atmosphere. Then people were really mobilizing, believing in this leader. Now it's a few small groups of diehards that are still standing out there and defending their former leader, although in many ways they're still associated.
And one interesting observation that one political analyst has made is that Zuma, the kind of support that former President Jacob Zuma is getting is quite appalling, an appalling disregard of the seriousness of the charges that he faces. I mean, I suppose in hindsight that it speaks to the blatant disregard of this very basic tenet of jurisprudence, or should I say of legality, that one is presumed innocent until proven otherwise.
Yes, it is
so
amazing.
It's actually held before the court of public opinion.
Amazing, the extent to which they try to present this as a defense of the person who's in favor of radical economic transformation, and that this is the reason those followers of his argue why Zuma is being persecuted. It is an utter and total denial of an continuous avalanche of facts about probable corruption.
Well, Terry Crawford Brown joining us all the way from Cape Town. Let's quickly get into the case as well. Terry, you were at the Arms Deal Commission. You were cross-examining some of the witnesses that had been called by the Seriti Commission. And I remember quite vividly at the time that the former President Thabo Mbeki accused you of treating his former colleagues, I guess, as well as the former minister who is now passed on, as quote-unquote minions.
Your volume was rather low, but I think I got the gist of it. I think the tragedy is that even before the UN arms embargo against apartheid South Africa was rescinded in 1994, European governments were lobbying intensively for South Africa to buy weapons we didn't need and couldn't afford. And they found people to do the work for them, including members of the cabinet subcommittee led by former President Mbeki, and obviously now Mr. Zuma as part and parcel of it. So we've had 25 years of delays and cover-ups. The DeLille dossier came to light in 1999. And then we had the JIT investigation, another cover-up. The Seriti Commission, after I took President Zuma to the Constitutional Court in 2010, he could not rebut the huge volume of evidence of corruption relating to BAE, the German Frigate Consortium, Submarine Consortium, and of course we've had the previous case against Shabir Sheikh with Thales and Tint. So there's a huge volume of evidence. The Seriti Commission was a farce, and I said so publicly many times, that it was a farce from day one, and that was revealed again when Mr. Moabi resigned, saying that Judge Seriti had a secret agenda to silence the Terry Crawford Browns of this world. So eventually, when the report came out, it was blatant. So instead of silencing the Terry Crawford Browns of this world, we thankfully now have Mr. Zuma in court, but there are a lot of other people, including not only members of our own government, but also the European governments that knew fully that we faced huge social problems in this country as legacies of apartheid, and they willfully unleashed a culture of corruption that we now face today in South Africa.
I wonder then, do you think at all, and I would like you to put on your legal head here, do you think at all that former President Jacob Zuma could use this Seriti Commission report that has found absolutely no wrongdoing when this trial eventually gets underway?
Well, the Seriti Commission report was so blatant it was discredited immediately it was released. And it has led, interestingly, to the People's Tribunal on Economic Crime held at the Constitutional Court in February, the first hearings of 5 days. And a former lawyer for Tint testified. And he testified that after President Zuma appointed the Seriti Commission, he phoned the lawyer, Mr. Suklal, to tell him not to tell the Commission that the French had been paying him up until 2009.
Now, Mr. Crawford Brown, you're speaking to Simpiwe now. I understand you have to leave, but before I let you go, let's quickly...
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You're speaking to Simpiwe now. Before I let you go, quickly take us through the origins of the arms deal. Just getting back to that figure, it started off at 1.8 billion rand, but then the number that I read through your affidavits was 30 billion rand. And Andrew Feinstein at that time said that it had actually escalated to 70 billion rand. How is that all possible? Mr. Crawford Brown, can you hear me?
Can't hear anything.
Well, unfortunately, we seem to have lost Mr. Terry Crawford Brown there, but we'll try to re-establish that line. Let's just go straight to the Bloemfontein High Court, where Julius Malema, the EFF leader, is appearing in court. Oh, well, it seems that we've lost the line to the Bloemfontein High Court as well, where Julius Malema is appearing. The EFF leader, Julius Malema, is expected to, is appearing rather, at the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court today. He's facing charges of contravening the Writers' Assemblies Act of 1956 for allegedly inciting his supporters to occupy land.
Well, remember that in 2014, Malema allegedly urged party members, to occupy land, saying that it belonged to the black people of South Africa. And his legal team says the Writers' Assembly Act is very much unconstitutional. And during previous court appearances in Bloemfontein, he enjoyed support of hundreds and hundreds of people. And he's expected to address supporters outside the court. And we do understand that he's already in court now.
Well, tell you something about this case. This has been a matter that I've been following as well. In the Durban, in a Pietermaritzburg Magistrates Court, he was facing a similar charge, but he has gone to the High Court to have the Writers' Act declared unconstitutional. He believes even the Review Committee of Parliament that looks into the laws that needs to be repealed from the apartheid era has failed in doing this time around. Susan Boyson.
Yes, indeed. I think it is a good time to take a good look at all these largely pieces of security legislation that still comes from the previous age, because they are inherently and automatically illegitimate in the public mind and in many other ethical political ways as well, when they are used in a current dispensation. And if there is validity and a need for anything like that, vaguely approximately that, then there should be new replacement legislation to ensure that the laws actually have the legitimacy. Laws from the apartheid era, especially security, really lack legitimacy. So I think it's a good time for a general overview.
Well, there you have visuals outside the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where Julius Malema, the EFF leader, is appearing on charges of inciting his supporters to occupy land. I remember him saying, Simpiwe, that when you see, quote unquote, a beautiful piece of land and you like it, occupy it. And I wonder, though, with the current discussion and the current narrative that's taking place after the Parliament has now adopted the land expropriation without compensation, whether Julius Malema now finds more favour or more credibility that he has taken this stance.
Yes, indeed. I think those points are converging very nicely for the EFF, because there is a new narrative in the country, and there have been these motions in Parliament, and there's a review process underway, and all of that will really build up and could articulate very well with the issues that are being taken to court and that will be pursued against Julius Malema here.
Well, there you have it. Julius Malema, the EFF leader, with the spokesperson of the party. As you can see, supporters of the EFF outside the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where Julius Malema was appearing on a charge of inciting his supporters, as well members of the EFF, to occupy land. One thing that you have to give the EFF is the ability to mobilize, and they've done this even outside Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's house as well.
Yes, I think Jacob Zuma and his crowd in Durban could take a few lessons from mobilization in Bloemfontein. And there is a sense of passion here. In either case, we see the exact number. We haven't seen the higher aerial shots to get an idea as to the extent of crowds converging either in Bloemfontein or in Durban. That would be really interesting to know whether it's hundreds or thousands.
At the same time, this is extraordinary. At the same time.
At the very same time, we see visuals of President Jacob Zuma, or former President Jacob Zuma, exiting the High Court at the same time that Julius Malema is getting into the Bloemfontein High Court. This is absolutely extraordinary.
This is extraordinary, Cecily.
Like a rehearsed musical about the past and the present.
Someone might argue that this has been choreographed to appear this way, that you have the former leader of the ANC walking outside the Durban High Court, and you have the leader of the EFF, who is a staunch opponent now of Jacob Zuma, also walking outside.
And it does look like he's about to address the crowd at the same time that former President Jacob Zuma might address the crowd. This is quite groundbreaking, I must say.
Well, look at those visuals there. One of the visuals coming outside of the Durban High Court, where you have former President Jacob Zuma, and on the other hand, visuals outside the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where the EFF leader Julius Malema has appeared. Will both of them be addressing the crowds at the same time? You have red on one hand, and then you have the black, green and gold on the other hand.
Indeed, CEO Beret on the one screen, and as Aldrin said, green, gold on the other hand. And now, Professor Voisin, Julius Malema did implore EFF members to be ready to take over government from the ANC, especially in the big metros. One may wonder, is this really a populist rhetoric? And I mean, given the fact that Julius Malema did say that at some point, while he's still in the ANC, that we need to expropriate land without compensation, now that it does appear that this will be a reality anytime soon. So do you think that the ANC has literally handed power over to the EFF?
No, I do not see that, and that is not what some credible public opinion polls on the ground are telling us. The ANC is still by far the largest party, and in all likelihood, come next year's elections will be the largest party, and if not, it could very well manage to get an outright majority, given the renewal and Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC, this new ANC, being given, it seems, a new chance. And so the EFF rhetoric has to be seen in that context too. No political party can really claim mass credibility and have a good run up to the election if they do not claim they have the ability to win. And again, if I can fall back on public opinion polls, EFF is improving, but not even overtaking the DA when it comes to those votes. So it is, where does the popular rhetoric and on-the-ground mobilization meet with electoral politics, and can they feed that into electoral politics?
Okay, well, let's go straight to Cape Town, where we have Lawson Naidoo, who's from the Council for the Advancement of South Africa's Constitution. Lawson, you guys went to court to try and force the NDPP, Shaun Abrahams, not to make the announcement, and the Constitutional Court found that the crisis has been self-created. And of course, at this time, we're also waiting for the court whether it will uphold that High Court ruling that whether the NDPP's appointment should be set aside.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Yes, CASAC had approached the Constitutional Court on an urgent basis because we believe that it was inappropriate for someone as tainted as Mr. Shaun Abrahams, as the head of the NPA, to take a decision regarding the reinstitution of charges against Jacob Zuma. We'll recall that it was Mr. Abrahams who fought alongside Mr. Zuma to avoid having his day in court until they both made an about turn before the Supreme Court of Appeal late last year. So in those circumstances, we felt it was inappropriate that someone like Abraham should take that decision, but nevertheless, we welcome the fact, and this is a historic day, that a former president of the Republic is sitting in a criminal court facing charges of fraud, corruption, racketeering, and money laundering. So this has been a long battle to get Jacob Zuma to face his day in court. It's the start of a process, but I think a vindication for the rule of law in South Africa.
Do you at all think, though, that CASAC may have jumped the gun, considering that Shaun Abrahams has now reinstated those charges?
No, it's not about whether he was going to reinstate or not reinstate the charges. The point was made that it is inappropriate for someone who the High Court in December ruled whose appointment was invalid should be taking such a decision. Had nothing to do with the decision itself, but the very nature of the process of taking that decision. So I don't believe that we jumped the gun. I think that the Constitutional Court did not provide a judgment on the merits of the arguments that we placed before the court, but rather on the basis of a lack of urgency in the matter. Having said that, the matter is now before the court. We certainly hope that when the case comes back before court on the 8th of June, that the trial process will be set in motion as soon as possible thereafter, so that finally we can have these allegations of on the 16 charges that Jacob Zuma faces aired in court, and that an independent judiciary can take a decision as to his guilt or otherwise.
Well, the visuals that you are seeing now on your screen are visuals straight out of outside the Durban High Court, where you have the clergy who's been supporting President Jacob Zuma, also had prayer sessions for the former president. And then on the other side of the screen, you have visuals outside the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where we expect the EFF leader, Julius Malema, to be addressing the crowd. Lawson, before I let you go, one of the issues that the Constitutional Court will have to look into is whether Mxolisi Nxasane must be reinstated as the NDPP. Where does CASAC stand on that matter?
Well, it was an application that was brought by CASAC together with other organizations, Freedom Under Law and Corruption Watch, that sought firstly to set aside what we believe was the unlawful golden handshake of 17.3 million paid to entice Mr. Nkasana to leave office. We felt that that was unlawful, that his removal being unlawful, that there was no vacancy for Mr. Abrahams to fill, and therefore his appointment as NDPP should be set aside. We also asked the court to declare unconstitutional various sections of the NPA Act, and we were successful on all of those grounds before the High Court. We are now awaiting a confirmation order from the Constitutional Court on those various matters, and that judgment, I think, is imminent, and we're expecting it any day now. And once that judgment is handed down, if it concurs with the High Court ruling, then President Ramaphosa will be in a position to appoint a new National Director of Public Prosecutions who can hopefully begin the process of revitalizing and restoring public confidence in that institution.
Sorry, are you then saying that that person shouldn't be Mxolisi Nxasane?
We have not supported the reappointment of Mr. Nkasana, particularly in this case, but should the court decide that Mr. Nkosana should be reappointed, we would have no objection to that.
Well, thank you so much. They're from Lawson Naidu, from KESEC. They have gone to the Constitutional Court to have that High Court ruling upheld, that the NDPP, Sean Abrams, who's taken this decision to reinstate the charges against former President Jacob Zuma, that has led to the moment that we're seeing in front of our screens now, that his appointment be set aside.
Regime that says that they adopted the Freedom Charter and they live and die by the Freedom Charter. When somebody said that clause that is in the Freedom Charter, what do? They arrest him. So this date, the 6th of April, will somebody has just sent on Twitter now to say it should be declared National Land Day. In the EFF, we have already declared it the National Land Day. It is a very important date on our calendar, so when we live here, we are going to be going to a national event organized by the EFF in George in the Western Cape to mark our National Land Day. Viva the EFF, viva! So now, in that vein, I will call our Commander-in-Chief, or I'll call the Secretary General, Unopala. We have a proper Secretary General, not that Mahashula nonsense. So I'm going to call the real Secretary General country to come and address the matter. Mahashula Panse, Pambele Kodrish Pambele, Pambele Kati Pambele, Abashwa, Amanda. Thank you very much, our fighters. We have just to introduce our leadership that is with us here. We have the chairperson of the province, Commissar Khoto Morape. We have the secretary of the province, Commissar Mandisa Mashiko. Mandisa Makesin. We've got so many Mandisas in the EFF. Tata EFF, Tata! Tata EFF, Fata! Out, Mandambala, out! We have members of the Central Command team, some of them from around Free State, Commissar Sam Matiase. Zisonotake ukuthi athi izwe alibuyele kubanini balo. Umsholozi bafuna ukumfaka ejele ngoba uthi free education for all. Umsholozi bamfaka ejele ngoba uthi i-mining charter ithi umnotho awubuye kuthina abantu. Umsholozi bayamshaya ngoba uthi i-BRICS ayiqine ukuze i-World Bank ne-IMF egqileza i-Afrika iphume. We are here to stand with the President of the people. President Zuma, you are President of the people. You are not President of 400 people in Parliament who don't know what they are doing. We will stand with President Zuma now and will stand with him until the land returns. Let us say this, hands of Zuma are...
Well, there you have Andile Mqlitama, the leader of the BLF. Quite strangely, is that Andile Mqlitama once upon a time was standing next to Julius Malema as a leader of the EFF as well.
And quite interestingly, Andile Mqlitama, the leader of the BLF, an organization that advocates for the restoration of land into black hands. And he's appearing alongside former President Jacob Zuma on the very same time, on the very same day that his former ally in the EFF, Julius Malema, is appearing at the Bloemfontein High Court on issues of inciting people to illegally occupy land. That's quite an interesting coincidence there, Professor, don't you think?
It is a fascinating coincidence. It also shows how quickly political alliances can change. We now know that Andile is largely known for his support by and of the Guptas, and that he has been so closely associated with that whole empire, and that he was very involved in the ANC Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma campaign for at Nasrec elections. So the lines get very, very conflated and confused as to who is on what side. But we know unambiguously that the BLF is now one of the organizations. They have so closely associated themselves with the Zuptas and with Jacob Zuma that there is almost no other credible alternative political future for them at the moment than to stay on this bandwagon. But the times indeed have changed, and Andile Mqwana is one of those leaders who has been across the political spectrum. We thought he had found for some time a home in the EFF, but alas, that was not going to be.
Now that the land debate or the land issue has been reignited with the ANC partnering with the EFF towards the expropriation of land without compensation, and on the other hand, BLF has always been advocated for the land to be brought back to the hands of black people. So in this particular instance, should the land issue be passed, as it were, where does that leave the BLF?
The BLF is already really very, very isolated in a corner there, because the land issue has been taken from under their feet. There are other more credible proponents, both in the ANC and the EFF, that are taking this issue forward. And so it shows how the choice of probably the wrong political partners can really undermine the credibility of proponents, very credible, otherwise credible proponents of a certain ideological stance.
We're going to have to interrupt you there, Professor. Let's now go to Bloemfontein High Court.
EFF Free State, Tata, EFF Tata. Fasega Mahashule Fase. Fasega Mantombela Fase. Thank you very much. Relevua, our Secretary General, Godrich Gadi, and our National Chairperson, Advocate Dalim Pofu, and our leaders who are here from the province, the region, and the Central Command team, members of Parliament. Let me take this opportunity to thank you, comrades and fellow fighters, for having decided to come here in your numbers, because you said this court belongs to you. This is your case, and therefore it is not Julius Malema who's on trial, but the EFF is on trial. Because the EFF demanded that the right thing must be done. And the right thing is that the land must be returned in the hands of our people. Because at the core of our struggle, it is the demand for land. The reason why there were political parties of black people in South Africa, it is because they demanded the land. The first party to be formed was the ANC in 1912, following the wars of dispossession, when our people were defeated because they were fighting as small groups. They saw a need to come together and form one umbrella body which will unite them. And then they formed the ANC to fight for the land. The ANC was not formed to organize a 20 million farewell party for Ace Mahashule. The ANC was not formed to fight for positions and to enrich individuals and their families. So I'm very happy to be here today. And I'm very happy to appear before a court of law, not because I stole money from the poor, but because I'm fighting for the right thing. When you are persecuted for fighting for the right thing, then you know that you will die a martyr. Because the martyrs are those who are persecuted for fighting for the downtrodden and the poor masses of our people. So we are here not because we raped, we are here not because we killed anyone, we are here not because we stole anything. We are here for having recited the Freedom Charter that the people must occupy the land wherever they choose to do so. A new government that said it will be based on the will of the people and inspired by the Freedom Charter, it is now arresting us for repeating after the Freedom Charter. So because I'm not saying anything new, I'm just repeating what Nelson Mandela said. I'm repeating what Subukwe said. I'm repeating what Steve Biko said. I'm repeating what Chris Hani said. That the land should be returned in the hands of the rightful owners. That the land must be taken from those who have stolen our land. That the land is everything. For because our people, if they do not have the land, their dignity will not be restored. Land is dignity. Land is education. Land is quality health. Land is houses. Land is employment. Today you are here in your numbers because you are unemployed. But if you had the land, you are not going to be here because you will be busy working your land. That's what land does to people. It brings dignity. Lefatshe le tlisa seriti. Lefatshe le wetsa motho. Ha o motho ha o sena lefatshe. That's why we say our relationship with this land, it is not because we are visitors. Our umbilical cord were buried here. The same umbilical cords of white people who are now residing in South Africa, who were born here, they are South Africans too. They too must have the land, but they cannot have the land alone. They must be prepared to share the land with all the people of South Africa. No white man is going to be driven to the sea. There is no need for whites to be scared. There is no need for false alarm. Nowhere in the manifesto of the EFF, nowhere in the constitution of the EFF, nowhere in the utterances of the EFF, there is no narrative in the EFF that says white minority should be driven to the sea. South Africa will be a boring country without white people. We complement one another. They have naturalized here. How about you have naturalized? Can you imagine one day you wake up, there are no trees? The place will look so strange. Like one day we wake up, there are no white people. That will not be the South Africa we know. We want to live with them. We want them to excel not because they are white, but because they've got a particular skill. We want them to be successful, not because they are privileged by the color of their skin, but because they've got something to contribute. And if they've got nothing to contribute, then they must come and work for those who have a skill, who have something to contribute. There's nothing wrong having a white domestic worker. There's nothing wrong having a white farm worker. There is nothing wrong having a white security guard. As long as that is their skill, let them be positioned according to their qualification and their skills. Not because they are white, not because they are privileged. So when you say we want the land to be returned in the hands of the people, you are threatening white privilege. It's like you, when you are the only child until you are 18 and you are told all of a sudden your mother is pregnant, or you know you. I'm going to have to share this thing with somebody else. You are so used to having everything to yourself. But you learn to accept that you cannot stop nature. The new one has arrived. I must share with this one. That's what we're saying to them. The new one has arrived. That new one has arrived in 1994. And to refuse to share with the new one, you are refusing nature. You cannot go against nature and succeed. It is required by nature that those who share this territory, they must share equally. We want black-owned mines, not BEE. 100% black-owned mines. We want black-owned banks. We want black-owned chartered accountant firms, successful firms. We want big law firms. We want you to own the means of production. It is possible. Those who are saying it is not possible, it is because they are victims of colonialism. Please be patient with them. Don't be impatient with them. Habarkolona lialora bat ba EFF le babutsore tlhaloganyo ya hao e sa tshwere ke Jan van Riebeeck. You will be liberated one day. Don't be impatient with them, because you are liberated already. That's why you are in the EFF. How are you liberated? Your mind is free. You can talk to a white man as an equal because your mind is free. Don't be impatient. When we said, let's expropriate land without compensation, they said you are mad. They said the policies are EFF putlamisa economy rekasinkele fasi. Today, kibona baringi, the EFF is right. Let's expropriate the land without compensation. By 2014, look at 2016, the really battle will increase some pure fair social grants. Rarchelete ya bana hai dabulwe. Rarchelete ya bahulu hai dabulwe. DA yar ntotse di ahlanya tse. Mar Malema is mad. Where is he going to get the money? Yesterday, Musimai Mani was repeating after the EFF, we must double the social grant. Don't be impatient with them. We are ahead of them. The only problem, Dr. Mbuyiseni, is that every time they pronounce, they don't cite the source. And that is plagiarism in academia. I don't know what process we follow to launch a complaint that these people have plagiarized our manifesto and they don't acknowledge that the source is the EFF. Hey, ntotse a ditsibonana ka ufela tso. Ke dithotsela ntotse ka ufela combine. Bothoma ka ANC, ho latela DA, ba latelana jwalo as people who have got no ideas. Re ko bona free education. Bana ha ba ye dikolo mahala ba re tšhelete e tla tswa ko kae ra matša ka fees must fall ba re sebetsa le CIA. We want to collapse the economy. Today children are receiving free education. Aba sloba pa free education ra re ko bona bana ba ye ko di university ba sa register market rate ba register but Malema wants to cause death. Why is he saying children walk to university? The children listened to the EFF, walked into the universities, not even a single one died. Hey, you will collapse the economy. Hey, the children are going to die. Where is the money going to come from? Jiggy, 2 minutes. Hey, the same thing. That the children get free. More than 100,000 students in universities are in there free of charge because of the EFF. So,
all right, let's now cut out of that address by Julius Malema outside the Bloemfontein High Court and cross back to Durban outside the High Court where Jacob Zuma is taken to the podium.
Ngibonga kakhulu imithandazo yenu eniyenzayo ngaso sonke isikhathi. Sengathi uNkulunkulu anganika amandla njalo ukuthi umthandazo wenu isheshe ifike kuye, inkinga nizibikayo zisheshe zisombululeke. Bahle futhi abafundisi abangesabi. Ngoba mawusithunywa sikaNkulunkulu umele iqiniso. Awumeli intando zethu la emhlabeni. Ngifuna futhi ukuthi ngibona abaholi bekhona ikakhulu ubaba uPremier wala kule province. Ubaba uNyanda Mkhonto Maqingwa kanye nabanye abaholi abakhona bona nabaholi bembokodo bakhona yala kwi-province nabaholi bentsha bakhona la kwi-province nabo bonke-ke abaholi abaqhamuke enhlanganweni ezahlukahlukene nani nonke enikhona lapha phakathi kwethu ngifuna ukuzibongela ngiphinde futhi ngizibongele njengoba ngake ngabonga eminyakeni eminingi edlule. Kunezinto ezike zihlela abantu zikulandele noma uthi uyazivika zingavikeki. Ngo-2005 ngicabanga ukuthi uma izibalo zami ngihlanganisa kahle sekuyishumi leminyaka neminyaka emithathu ngavela enkantolo ngibekwa lamacala engibekwa wona namhlanje. Angaze ngizwe ukuthi umuntu ubekwa icala elilodwa lichithwe liphinde libuye futhi. Awukho umehluko nomncane. Esile manje ayikade maningi. Esesile manje angazi ukuthi lawa athethwe nini lawa asukile. Elinye ijaji lapho eMgungundlovu lathi malikhipha isinqumo lingikhipha phambili ngoba awekho namacala akhiwe asungulwa kwaboshwa amanqinanyathe epolitiki I think wakujaji uNelson uhulumeni wa-aphila ukuthi kufanele ngilahlele licala noma kumnyama kubomvu. Kuthe kusenjalo kwatholakala ukuthi ngempela ijaji lali-right. Kwatholakala izinto ey'qoshwe phansi kwababekhuluma ngemfihlakalo ukuthi angiboshelweni. Lokhu sekudume ngokuthi ama-tapes ayakhuluma. Ngiyofisa nje ukuthi nenkantolo uma iqhubekile ngoba sizoyi-challenge. Sizoyi-challenge bona basithathe kanjani isinqumo. Kodwa uma iqhubekile akalelelwe yizwe lama-tape ukuthi ayithini ukuze le nto engiyisho nizwe ukuthi ngangingakhulumi nje ngoba ngizonda abantu. Ile nto eyabangela ukuthi abashushisi babone ukuthi abalihoxisi icala ngoba bonile bangibophela amanqina enyathi. Libuyiswa ipolitiki namanje. Kukhona amaqembu aphikisayo. Ipolitiki ayikho dololo. Abakwazi ukuxoxa ePhalamende bawine i-debate. Benza idemokhrasi yethu ibe isimanga. Baqhuba i-opposition yabo not ePhalamende, ey'nkantolo. Ayikho ipolitiki. Yibo laba ngaphezu kweshumi leminyaka eselokhu beyinkantolo bathi sifuna leli cala, sifuna leli cala, sifuna leli cala. Nama-tape lawa uma uzokhulunywa ngawo ngazuthi imina lokhuluma phakathi because kuthiwa Zuma tapes. Hayi kukhulunywa ngami. Abanye abantu abakhuluma lapha phakathi bebopha amaqhinga okungibopha. Asiyekekele ngoba sengibekwe icala njengoba ngize namhlanje ngizobekwa icala. Ngibekwa la amacala engabekwa wona lawo kwathola ukuthi angamanqina enyathi. Inkantolo zisathi hayi ake ngiqhutshwe ngiboshwe. Kunengeke sokungehlele njengensizwa mina ngiyazi uma insizwa izinto ziyakwehlela nje. Ziyakwehlela. Uma ngithi kwenze njani akekho okhulumayo. Kodwa bayoze baxoxa lamagwaba bethoba. Ngelinye ilanga ngeke singene endabeni yecala leli manje ngoba selibuyele ezenkantolo. Kuthiwa indaba zasenkantolo kazixoxe emgwaqweni. Abafundele bathi sub judice. Ngeke ngixoxe nje into eyenzekile namhlanje sifikile labeka icala lasehlehlisiselwa ngubani hlaka 8 kuJune. Ngoba kusekhona imininingwane esazoqhubeka. Ngithena nje ngikusho lokho ngoba ikhona ukukhulunyiwe nokufunda nje emaphepheni ngoba intatheli bezikhona. Angikukhuluma okunye. Lisehlile siyobuyela enkantolo mhla ka-8 kuJune. Ngifuna ukunibonga-ke ukuthi namanje ngemva kweshumi leminyaka neminyaka emithathu lapho khona naninginikeza isapoti enkulu namanje nisaqhubeka nisenze njalo. Ngokwazi kwethu umuntu uma ebekwe amacala akusho ukuthi usegwetshiwe, usenamalungelo agcwele awonke umuntu. Uma beyibeka ngesingisi bathi innocent until proven otherwise. Bayamangaza-ke abantu abafuna ukungithatha sengathi sengiyisiboshwa. Nabantu engibathembile nje impela. Nabantu engazi ukuthi impela bayizingcweti zomthetho. Bafuna ukuthi ngiphathwe njengesiboshwa. Iboshwa ezingahlangani nabantu. Phezocela ugwayi. So ukuba khona kwenu la kubonisa ukuthi indaba ye-constitution nomthetho neyazi kahle. Anizwa ngendaba. Ngoba alidedelwe icala liqhubeka uma nizoqhubeka. Ngoba zikhona ingqinamba ngaleli cala. Lize lifike ekugcineni. Futhi abafuna liqhubeke mhlawumbe uma seliqhubeka bayofisa ukuthi lingaqhubeki. Ngoba amanga namanqenenyathi ebhekene neqiniso kuyobonakala. Ngibeka amacala okuthengwa kweyikhaya. Lathengwa ngila kwi-province mina ngiyi-MEC. Ngithengwa i-government enational. Mhlawumbe kwakuwumoya wami wawulaphaya angazi. Uzokangitshele umuntu ngenzani. Kodwa-ke asiyekele enkantolo. Umsebenzi wenkantolo lo. Kodwa lisangcolisiwe igama likaZuma. Noma bekhuluma ngoZuma abasho ukuthi kunama allegations against uZuma. Kuthiwa nje uZuma isikhohlakala. Banenhlanhla abantu bengasashaya. Ngoba ngabe sengashaya abantu abaningi lapha nesikhulu. Abakhuzwa uma besho njalo. Kodwa-ke hayi ngizama nje ukusho ukuthi mina sekungicacele manje ukuthi abantu abaphethe umthetho ezamacala nabantu bezepolitiki njengoba umuntu ngamunye enamalungelo nje mina bacabanga ukuthi anginawo. Basho yonke into abayithandayo. Impela njengoba ngisho nje banenhlanhla ukuthi abantu abasashayo. Lokungenadosi nje iyaqhinyela. Lokungenabuso mhlambele endishini. Kodwa-ke akuthusi lokho ngoba ngiyabazi abantu mina ngazi lento kuthiwa umuntu onobuntu ngazi noma nabantu futhi kuthiwa uhlaza lo nabantu futhi kuthiwa uyeyisa lo abafana abantu kodwa ke ngafunda isifundo esihle ukuthi umuntu uma ekweyisa myeke usukumlandela ngoba wena umuntu wangempela ngisho kuthuka ethi uyinja hleka nje uyihambele ngoba uyona inja futhi uma ungase uphindizele kuphindisele kuye sokusola ukuthi kanti uyasola na ukuthi uyinja na ulelani pho ngoba uyona inja uhambe ngenyawo eziwu-4 awunawo umlomo ucijile awunamsilo omude ukhathazwa yini ke so uma bethuka ubusuku nemini ngiyababuka nje ngisho amapolitician akhuluma ngami ngiyababuka nje awazi napolitiki amanye abo amavukana nje akazi nokuthi kuyiwaphi ngike ngezwe elinye lithi uZuma akangakhankasi kulolu khetho akangakhankasi ngathi yibo labantu engangibashaya msemshe faka induku nje ngithi qonda uthi thwile ngiyabonga bakwethu akulona ilanga lokukhuluma leli ilanga lokubonga ngifisa ukubonga futhi izikhulumo esezibe khona ngemva kokuba sekuthandaziwe ezisho izinto ezibaluleke kabi kithina thina ndlu emnyama khona into eningayazi indlu emnyama ihlupheka kulo lonke izwe akukho lapho kufika khona ingahlupheki kwezinye indawo nje amazweni amakhulu nedemocracy enkulu badutshulwa njalo nje badutshulwa sengilikhohliwe lelizwe ukuthi liphi konje bake bahlala phezu komuntu bemklinya wathi uma uyavaleka bawuvala wafa ngoba emnyama ngisho ngayakuliphi izwe ngisho ngayakwelamangisi lapho kuhlala khona abantu abamnyama kunomehluko nalapho kuhlala khona abangemnyama umthwalo womuntu omnyama unzima ngenkathi kuqoqwa abantu bedayiswa njengempahla benziwa igqila iningi labo kwakungabantu base-Afrika elacebisa amanye amazwe ngenkathi amazwe ase-Europe ehlangana eJalimane exoxa ngokuthi aweze Afrika kuleli zwekazi lase-Afrika azolehlukanisa enze amazwe awo e-Afrika awakaze ayenze kwenye ilokhuzana i-continent yenziwa la kuthina kuphela ngiyababona nje abase-Latin America kodwa la kwakufiwa usizi lwama-systems abuhlungu adlule kumuntu omnyama thina-ke silwela inkululeko hhayi ngumlomo sangena phakathi sizimisela ukufa nokufa sayiwina inkululeko ngo-1994 inkinga yethu manje ikakhulu lengizondelwa yona ingoba ngithi ayipheleli inkululeko uma unepolitiki kuphela ingekho i-economy ingekho i-security ezandleni zakho yilezo zizathu-ke sigijinyiswe inkantolo ngoba sizama ukuvala umlomo twathula zohlakaniphisa abantu lamba nje wena ulungile ungabi nandaba nabantu abaneyimali ngoba ngeke bangene ezulwini kwanele ngizwe kahle ikhuluma izikhuluma la ngivumelana nazo kwanele kulungile mina ngiyenkantolo kodwa azilungise izinto kuphela indlala awubuye umhlaba ayishintshi i-economy besezandleni zawonke umuntu radical economic yes ngiyabonga bakwethu ngibonga kakhulu lokhu enikwenzayo libonisa ukuthi ithambo lowakini niyofalafela elifakhona ukubumbana kwenu kuyimfihlo yempumelelo uma ningabambene ningabumbene ningekho united lihlakazekile isitha siphephula kalula nje kodwa uma nibambene nihlangene niyoziwina zonke eniyozilwa ngiyanibonga ke bakwethu ngifuna ukubonga kakhulu abefundisi bami ababhishop abahlale bekhona ngaso sonke isikhathi laba bishop abamla abadidekile ukuthi ivangeli kufuneka lihambe kanjani benza lento esiyesizwe abefundisi bethu bekhuluma bethi ohluphekile nowonile ufuneke asingathwe akhulekelwe abaholi bezenkolo akushiyi ukuthi uma umthola ekhathazekile esenhlungwini ngicindezele enye inkolo leyo angazi noma eyaphi le nkolo kodwa uThixo akasho njalo ngiyabonga ke bakwethu bonga ukuthi nibe khona so manje ngaso sonke isikhathi amandla awethu ukuthi ngikhuluma nokangizwa kahle ukuthi
Former President Jacob Zuma addressing the multitudes of his supporters outside the Durban High Court shortly after the postponement of his corruption trial to the 8th of June. And Zuma crying victimization, saying that he's being victimized. And he's been making this call ever since the case got to the fore and since 13 years ago. And, you know, we now cross back to Bloemfontein High Court, where he's a former ally and now Chief 4, Julius Malema, is also addressing his supporters. Let's go there now.
Andizawa to go stadium mare he tlaling ngetsetse mfewele he kia Joburg kia tsama kia Joburg farewell kia etsetsa farewell ke empty stadium se mo shebile but ba Freistata ba ra re nontsontsho rena re ke re nontsontsho ba ra ha kae good riddance ba ta bona bo Malema ona mo hai Mole mutlisitse pleke right mo from lukisa go Gauteng mola o tla khutla mo ale rege. So fighters, let's go to the ground, let's work, let's build a strong EFF. We are very few We cannot afford to fight amongst ourselves. We must always close ranks because the enemy is out there to destroy us. We must look after each other's back. We must protect each other's back. It doesn't matter how angry you are with me. It doesn't matter how much angry you are about the branch people's assembly and the regional people's assembly. It's not about you. It's not about the branches. It's about this weapon in the hands of the landless masses of our people. You destroy the EFF. You destroy the hope of the unemployed. You destroy the EFF. You destroy the hope of the security guards. How senamo kotomo ukria wanama di security basa patelwe focus. Basaluta. They salute the red beret because that's where their hope is. Bomme ba sebetsa dikitcheneng bana ba banyane ba sebetsang ko mapolasing. When they see you, they see hope. Wena o ka ba o batla o benefita in the immediate hore ya ka etswa councilora o alla. Hey, it's not about you. It's about these so many graduates who are not working. By the kolo ka chelete tsa mafello go hae ka di chelete tsa wa di misiwa, yet they don't have jobs. Mesebetsi e tswa ka difane. Ha o se mofukeng ha o thole, ha o se mbalula ha o thole. Go batla o tsebe Jabu Mbalula or something. Ha o sa itse Jabu Mbalula, okay. Ha o sa roba bona ba o batla dikobo, ha o sa roba le bona ha ba o fi mosebetsi. Ditaba tse sa tse o feria tja di tse feria di feria ka mosebetsi. Ba re ke inform ya government form Z33 ba propose ka Z33 ke na le Z33 ka mona ka utukisetse go lokisetse ebile ba bua proudly ba re ha ona ntwa ala mo ha ona ba mahala motho wa o batla dikobo ntate wa ANC a thoka mena sa mosebetsi ntate it's one feeling to your body. Rebata ore feeling to have about to Musebeti Gadiko. Rebata Usebeta, Kaufela Rona, because we qualify. Yare Senadi Kolo, Renalidi IT, which is South African. Now let me say it Fayang, but Bas Kenandi Kolo, Rebata we turn a little. White but South Africa, hey, Lerata EFO, Halil Matati, Hali Jalia Levala EFO. Let vote about ANC Bona. About Temela Museve, Zimbabwe security, Utabo Machaga boots just security. We are the office in EFF, televoted Uguamaka. How can we vote in Gaberi Winnie? And how can we win? Nerikasu Pevele Museveti, Nerikom Kakoka, Rapsena Mopuso full time, was 7 days so. Troelamu Rada EFF Alili Matate. Lelo, not the analyst. The Rata EFF Alili Trabulo. We want to get to the last Sunday Times. Ababa Patel, Baba discriminator. The journalist just Sunday Times. But I will see Guaga, CIC, Keribana, let's look at CIC. We see here in a level refigibo, here to Ham Pico Sunday Times. Mara highly the election, Utababona Baet and Dwella Yan Tepu, Zuma. Parasina Valo, Asina Valo Kai. value, full value. Because when you are in trouble, hey, where is the EFF? When they are beaten by whites, where is the EFF office? Hey, send this to EFF. When they are not paid salaries, hey, send this to EFF. Maradi election in Fita. Hi, Spuma Gute no Koplos. Hi, regards Regis Mandela. Regards Regis Mandela Ugaiwe. Regis Mandela again. Utakoli bitena Mandela Shapa Mabu. Harry Rateng EFF. How limunati la ule mufuku. Ritavona siriti sabat baba susita kuta. Karki EFF limosi. Ye lwane lambat baba. Yes nam problemu. Hai lwane lambat baba. Harye ritene mutsi ka mutsi. Suska khatala banabisu. Never be tired. Ko dipetlele kwa ke rena ba sile dipetlele o ka re ke di hoko tsa di khu o ka re ke mo nang di tonki ka mo di wateng tsa bana di rifu di a wela di pula di a kena bana ba banyenyane ba ba sa tsobelewa. They must be born into a comfort zone. Bana ba rena, they get born into poverty, into indignity, and that will be their life for the rest of their life. They see poverty the day they are born until they die. Even when we bury them, their funerals are the same as the day of their birth. They've never known a better life. When you were born into a bad condition, your children are born into a bad condition. How na me bete ko di betele batho ba mo fatsi Miriana ite but ba kulang ke malwetse a maholo abu HIV and AIDS ba bitswa ba eme molaini mo ba fotse line ba AIDS tlanka mona ba bitswa in front of other people ba humiliate like that because they don't want them to come back. Those are our people. That's why the Ngwahawo ke ngwaha wa public health. Hona le minister Ramola ba re ke motswaledi ba morata ambi di journalists ba phela ba re motswaledi the best minister le aba mo rate ba mo fa B ba mo fa A motswaledi the best minister. How? Because all public hospitals have collapsed, including the public hospitals which were meant for white people. They used to be the best hospitals. The ANC came and destroyed them. They were bound to collapse. Why? Those hospitals were meant to accommodate few white people. Since you opened them, the capacity is too low to carry so many people. We're supposed to open those hospitals and increase their capacity because we're now opening the doors for everyone. They've not done that. What used to be the best hospitals are now extremely bad hospitals. If you can't get education right, if you can't get health right, forget. What are you in government for? You are in government for tenders, for friends. Because that is not why we need a government that will address the basic needs. I'm saying to you, economic freedom is land, but land cannot be given to uneducated people. Because uneducated people, when you give them land today, they sell it back to the same person we took from. Why? Abati, Mara, Babata Chelet. So we must educate you. Or Halifax in Fita, Oscana or Chelete, if it Halifax. Bow for 1 million. But you can make 5 million. Got that land. But because you're not educated and you don't know, you allow that nonsense. That's why education is a sustainable solution to economic freedom. And you are too old. Basic education, the land is coming. It must find you ready. Le fasa alinyake batho ba dinyaupe. Le fasa le batho ba di alcohol. Le fasa le batho ba ba le the necessary knowledge and skills and the necessary energy to work the land. Fighters, we will see you soon. They will tell you once we're finalized with the family of Mrs. Winnie Mandela. It looks like there will be another activity here, which will be announced in a due course once a family is met and we've agreed on how we're going to proceed. Thank you very much for coming in your numbers. Please go home peacefully in a disciplined manner. Don't allow the enemy to suck your blood. Thank you.
All right, Julius Malema addressing the throngs of supporters just outside the Bloemfontein High Court, wherein he's just appeared briefly and after his case was postponed to the 27th of July. Remember that he's been charged for inciting violence under the Rhetoric Act for telling people that when they see a nice piece of land, they should just occupy it. And one interesting observation is that this day, 366 years ago, Jan van Riebeeck settled in South Africa, and pundits say that this is actually the day that heralded the dispossession of land from black people by the white settlers. And this day is the actual day that Julius Malema is appearing in court on the same issue of the land. That's interesting, Professor, don't you think?
It is another fascinating coincidence of this day, and yes, historical significance, very, very tangible. And Julius Malema then addressing the land and land issue in a very profound way in his speech, and emphatic in terms of the need to reclaim land. And of course, that is so essential to the emotive aspects of capture and conquest in South Africa. And for the future, for future stability, that emotive issue needs to be addressed. And Julius Malema was also setting out some very practical options, including making sure that his advocacy of land expropriation is not equated with racism and driving land whites back into the ocean where Jan van Riebeeck came from, but emphasizing that it has to be shared, and emphasizing several points in his speech, the need for orderliness and discipline, but showing how he really is a great orator and he can mobilize and take those people in front of him and masses who were probably listening to him with him.
Okay, well, another case that just unfolded inside the Durban High Court is where former President Jacob Zuma appeared, and his matter has been postponed to the 8th of June. We now cross over to our reporter, Ayanda Mhlongo, standing by in Durban. Ayanda, quite interesting seeing the former president on the podium and, of course, making a lot of allegations and also, again, making the argument of political interference in his case.
Yeah, Aldrin, very good afternoon to you. Very interesting, good morning rather. Very interesting day today, and certainly that speech delivered by former President Jacob Zuma to the couple of 1,000 people who had gathered out here this morning in support of him, and basically saying that he is innocent before the law, and he's going on and further saying that he's disappointed that there are so many people who, both politicians and those who he says know the law, who have treated him as a person who was already guilty before a court of law find him innocent. You know, Aldrin, he's also spoken about, went back to speak about how long this case has gone on, saying that he's been basically in and out of courts now for over 10 years, saying that it's still the same case, still the same charges that are leveled against him. Also speaking about the spy tapes there, you heard him saying that when they say it's the Zuma spy tapes, one would believe that they are in fact talking about him, as if he is one of the people who are recorded as speaking recorded in those spy tapes. And he says that clearly those spy tapes were conversations with other people who are plotting, he said, against him. And again, saying to the supporters, in essence, that still very much believes that there is a motive behind this case. And as you heard as well from the crowd, a great deal of support and cheers and people agreeing with him and saying that regardless of what happens, that they're going to continue to support him. The people here have been saying that this case is a case of a political conspiracy against a man who has supported the majority, who has implemented policies and programs that are going to be of benefit to the majority of South Africans, being the black South Africans. But just now to unpack just a little bit further what the president said, as also some of the messages that we got, the messages of support from some of the other leaders who were there on the stage with him. We now have Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Prof, we've been with you many years. You've been following this case very closely. The president's speech, you went out and you listened to him. What did you make of it?
Yeah, there are a couple of issues. One, you could tell that on the one hand, the president was in a jovial mood, as he always does. But then on the other hand, you get a sense of someone who's concerned. He's not only concerned about his current position at the moment, but he's concerned about people within the ANC who have vilified him, as it were. Because in his view, some of those people who have been persecuting him since 2005 are the people he used to refer to as comrades. But then as far as he's concerned, they wanted him out of the position at all costs, so which means that in his view, this has nothing to do with the case as such or the cases as such, but has everything to do with those who are politically inclined and therefore want him out of the picture at all costs. So basically he is concerned in a way, but at the same time he's appreciative of the support that he enjoys, and you could tell that in fact he enjoys it when he started singing and then people responded positively. So I think it's a mixed reaction, so to speak. On the one hand he's concerned, on the other hand he's happy, but then he's also worried about the fact that some of the people he trusted have now turned against him, some of whom he refers to as the newcomers who have joined the fray, but then they want him to leave the ANC, in fact, in his own interpretation.
Prof, were you not particularly concerned about the message when he relayed, when he spoke about when the charges were withdrawn, but how he put it to the public was that he was found innocent, and as we know that this case has not gone to trial yet?
No, I think that one will always happen in an event like this one, especially in a mood where everyone is supporting you. But I think that on that one, I think the former president did not represent it well when he said that he was found innocent, because there's never been any case. This is the first time that the president is being formally charged. What most of us have been complaining about is that there have been concerns that the president is implicated in a number of cases, but then there was no one who proved either that he was guilty or that he was innocent. So this is the first time that we are going to see the president answering for himself on those charges that have been laid against him. Because constitutionally, you are assumed innocent until proven guilty or until proven otherwise, as the former president was saying. So I think on that one, just as the slip of the tongue, but the reality of the matter is, for the first time, this is going to be tested in court. The allegations are going to be tested in court, and the president will be afforded an opportunity to defend himself.
Prof, I just want to come back now to their supporters. The message from the ANC, NEC, of course, the leaders who are here, most of them have said they're not even wearing ANC T-shirts. They said they're here in their personal capacities. But the message was wearing ANC T-shirts. Clearly, you see that the supporters on the ground have defied that message or that instruction by the NEC. They've come out wearing ANC T-shirts, wearing ANC regalia.
No, I think that the ANC, NEC made a mistake. This is one case where they were not supposed to make any pronouncement because they knew for sure that no one is going to listen to them except for the leaders. As you could say, the likes of Kalne House, they came here and they indicated they've come in their personal capacity. But as for the majority, there is no way you can tell ANC members not to wear ANC colors when they are supporting an ANC member. Because remember that former President Zuma is the former president of the ANC, he's the former president of the party, but he still remains the member of the ANC. And the NEC is quite aware of that. So as to why they made that ruling, I'm not too sure. In fact, they are making themselves look bad because now that people have come in ANC regalia, then it will appear as if the NEC has failed to deliver a message, which is not supposed to have happened in the first place.
All right, Prof, thanks very much for your insight there. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, just, of course, giving us insight about President Jacob Zuma's speech, as well as, I think, really importantly on that last question there, Aldrin, was about the supporters who are out here today. We did speak to them earlier on, in fact, speaking to them about coming out with their ANC regalia and ANC T-shirts, and they were saying that if they're going to be called defiant, well, then they are defiant, and that they are here as members of the ANC to support a leader of the ANC, and also saying that come June 8th, when former President Jacob Zuma returns to court, they are still going to come out again in their numbers, as you've seen today, to show support for the former President. Aldrin.
Well, thank you so much. There you have it from Ayanda Mhlongo joining us from outside the Durban High Court, where the former President Jacob Zuma was speaking, of course, saying that he remains innocent until proven otherwise. The court case that the president or the former president was referring to there was the Nicholson judgment, and we all remember that the Nicholson judgment did not find that the president was innocent. However, though, it did find that there was political interference, but that court ruling was appealed at the Supreme Court of Appeal. That court ruling, of course, Professor Boysen, also found the Nicholson judgment said that former President Thabo Mbeki meddled in these affairs, but the Supreme Court of Appeal put that aside. Just quickly before we go into our tweets.
Yes, indeed. The Supreme Court overturned that, and Mbeki should technically not have been ousted by the ANC
because that was
before that.
That was the judgment that was used to remove...
That was the big trigger factor that led to the recall of Thabo Mbeki.
Okay, well, now let's just quickly look at some of the tweets that have been coming through. We have a tweet here from Siafana Zulu, who says... at SABC Newsroom, Viva Msholozi Viva, hashtag Jacob Zuma. As you saw, he's probably amongst those who were supporting the former president outside the Durban High Court.
Indeed, and Diamond says, the man plays a victim game today, forgetting that we are in this VAT increasing prognosis because of him and his greed. He murdered the hopes and promising future of young and old South Africans. He nationalized corruption, and now he's even hard to get services without bribes.
Well, so let's see if we have more tweets there. There we have a tweet there from Michael, who says at SABC Newsroom, we will rally behind him and we won't turn our backs on him like the new ANC NEC. If the NEC has a personal agenda against Mr. J.G. Zuma, they mustn't involve us, and we will be wearing my ANC colours, or the ANC colours, and support him because he is already guilty in the court of public opinion. And that's the thing about the court of public opinion. It plays a big role when it comes to politics.
And I guess that's the sentiment that Zuma has always been using ever since the case started 13 years ago, that he's always been found guilty, and he was heavily criticized by calling himself Jesus, hanging his hands up in the air, saying that he's being crucified for something that he never did, and again reiterating the fact that he is innocent until any court of law proves him guilty.
Well, quite interesting, though, is that listening to the former president, he was speaking about the issue around land, and some have been saying that he is the one who is the champion for radical economic transformation. And then on the other hand, in a few thousand kilometers away in Bloemfontein, you had the EFF leader, Julius Malema, also speaking on the issue of land and saying that black people must reoccupy their space in history. And quite importantly, that both these leaders, of one at least, a former leader, that is Jacob Zuma, were outside Mayor Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's house earlier this week, and quite important message that they gave at Winnie Madikizela-Mandela's house, who also spoke quite passionately about the issue of land and really praised the ANC for this resolution that has been taken by Parliament to go ahead with the land expropriation without compensation.
All right, another big story of the week perhaps is the death of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, and we're still in national mourning for the next 10 days or so, and mourners continue to flock to the house of the late struggle icon. Let's now take us about some of the quotes that had been attributed to the struggle icon. She said, returning land which translates to wealth back to the dispossessed majority is an important task because it is one way of addressing the injustices of apartheid. That's a quote by Winnie Madikizela-Mandela.
I wonder, Professor Susan Boyson, I've always said that Winnie Madikizela had this ability to bring foes together. Well, she had Cyril Ramaphosa on one arm and she had Julius Malema on the other arm. I wonder if she was alive today and she had an opportunity to stand with both the leaders, if she had a Julius Malema on the one hand and a Jacob Zuma on the other hand, what would she be saying listening to them speaking on the issue of land?
I wonder whether for once she would not have been speechless, because there were such different worlds there and different claims to radicalism. And we know Zuma really doing it as a cover for his corruption charges. And the people who've been mobilizing for him, really, they have been disingenuous in how they have been using radical economic transformation. So I actually wonder whether she would not have seriously been taking sides today.
Speaking about who would be standing next to you, quite importantly to looking at the visuals of where the former president Jacob Zuma was appearing outside the court, quite importantly would be who was standing next to him. Oh. We saw, for instance, that we had William Kunu, who is the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. We had Sihle Zikalala, the former chairperson, who's now also fighting to get his job back. Those were people who are in support of President Jacob Zuma. I wonder how the ANC, NEC would be reading into this. I saw even Des van Rooyen was in court as well.
Yes, that is interesting. They could very well justify their being there if they were there in their personal capacities and not in party regalia. And I think that is some of the argument that would be used. So many of them, other people out there, were in their formal regalia. And in a sense, there was a mini rebellion, and I wouldn't say insurrection, but a mini rebellion and challenge to ANC authority happening there. We could hear how Andile introduced the president, the former president, but as the president of the people. We heard Zuma himself saying they can be happy we are not assaulting people, and suggesting in a way that lucky people are not rising against all these injustices that he's claiming are being perpetrated against him. And
I guess it also speaks to the insurmountable levels of factionalism within the ANC. I mean, one faction of the ANC has distanced itself from Zuma's corruption trial, while the other faction of the ANC has continued to be supporting ANC. But then let's leave it there for now, Professor. Let's focus on the other big story of the day. Now, mourners continue to flock to the house of the late struggle icon Winnie Madikizela-Mandela in Orlando West. Our SABC reporter Mangoba Mkhunu is at the moment stationed outside the house, and we go to him live. Very good, well, should I say, a very good morning to you, Mangoba. Thanks for joining us. What's happening now?
Well, certainly, Simpiwe, some of those mourners have now started making their way here outside the house of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And of course, you remember that earlier on, the streets were cordoned off by members of the JMPD. As you recall, that the family had requested that they be given some time to also get some rest. You know, it's quite a trying time for them as the family having lost such an icon like Umama. And of course, many people wanting to come and pay their tribute. But of course, we've seen many of them them coming here and staying up until the late hours of the night. And of course, the family now asking for some time to also reflect on this loss and also to get much needed rest. And of course, as you can see behind me now, some of them starting to arrive. That book of condolences has now been set up again, where people can come and share their memories of Umama and also share their condolences with the family. And also if they want to also write a message to Umama, you know, write a message that is close to their hearts that they can share with Umama. Of course, we know that she touched the lives of many. That is undisputed. She was a struggle icon and known as the mother of the nation. So you would expect that a lot of people would come outside this home. But of course, there have been also some dignitaries who have arrived just a few minutes ago. I can count the likes of Inkosi Ngangomhlaba Matanzima, who's part of the Abatemu clan from the Eastern Cape, as well as the MEC for Arts, Recreation and Culture, Pemima Jodina, accompanying them there. But of course, just a few minutes ago also, we also saw the former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel making his way here. You recall that yesterday during a memorial in Cape Town, he had some very tough words to say against the Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Mahashule, for the restoration of that house in Brentford, in which Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, of course, was banished in. And of course, we also saw members of the Tambo family also making their way in. I saw Dali Tambo with his family going into the family homestead of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And of course, also we also spotted more of those as I'll say leaders of the ANC as well coming into the house. But on another matter that's separate to this, of course, we want to get more reactions from the people who have come here, some of the mourners who are here, just to get a sense of why they're here. I've got two young ladies here, one of them who's painted a portrait of Umama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. If I can just ask you to hold it up there, and Tabise Nkekan, of course, she's one of the students at UJ, who's an art student, first-year art student. And Tabise, you've painted a beautiful portrait of Umama. What was your inspiration behind it?
My inspiration was just her in general, just portraying the person who was who she was, a loving, an icon, a mother to all, not to only her kids, but to the nation and the world as abroad. So yeah, I just painted this just to tribute and just to thank her, even though I hadn't met her, but like personally, like spiritually, like I connected with her, regardless of not meeting her. But like I'm extremely grateful, and this painting, like I just wanted it to be not a painting of mourning, but rather like celebrating her life.
You've painted two images of Umama at different times of her life. Tell us about each of these and what they represent.
These two images, they represent like one the young Winnie, like we see her here as a struggle, as like a liberator, fighting for the liberation of South Africa. And the second one here, it's Mama now celebrating the freedom that she has fought for her people. Now she's just the mother who like yeah.
Okay, and for you as young people, what is it that you're going to take from Umama Winnie? What is it that you want to learn from her? What values have you taken from her that you'll want to obviously also, you know, use in your life?
What I've taken from Mama is to be selfless, put people before, put the community before you, help where you can, help people in times of need, and always be there for people, even though you don't have the power by means of capital, like you don't have money, but like just being there for someone, like giving the person just like an ear and a comfort. Yeah.
All right, what about you?
I think it's to stand your ground, because Umama only fought, like she wouldn't just take guilt it's like she wouldn't just give up so easily. So I think one of the values I've learned from her is to like stand your ground. If you believe for something, you should fight for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are, of course, being some of the students from the University of Johannesburg who have painted a beautiful painting of Umama, of course, in tribute to her. Part of the mourners who have gathered here outside the house, and they're hoping, of course, to give this painting to the family as an honor and a way of paying their respects to Umama. But of course, we do know that members of the ANC veterans are also expected to come here a bit later on. But of course, just before I hand it back to studio, the FW Declared Foundation also releasing a statement commemorating Umama. Here I've got the statement. If I'll just read just a few extras from it. It says, I remember Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela as a fearless person with a strong personality who never hesitated to speak the truth as she saw it. For that I have admiration. And of course it goes on to say that I remember from my personal experience a common humanity. She, for example, attended the funeral of the late Marika, my first wife. My wife Elita and I also went to visit Winnie after her great-grandchild died in a car accident, and she welcomed us warmly. There was a humanity to her that deserves great appreciation. Of course, that being the FW Declared Foundation also passing its words of encouragement to the family at this trying time. Of course, we will keep you abreast with what's happening here at Soweto as the
Well, I will certainly be in touch with you a little later on in the show, but thank you so much for your time. That is a reporter, Mangoba Mkunu, outside the home of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, wherein mourners are still flocking to pay their tribute and pay their homage, and as the outpouring of support and condolences continues, and as we've seen an avalanche of reaction from across the world and across all sectors in society.
Well, I have to say, quite a beautiful portrait there that has been painted by that young lady. There was a portrait that did the rounds about 2 days ago where people kept on asking, no, this cannot be Mama Winnie. And they were like, this might be Desmond Tutu, definitely not, definitely not Mama Winnie. So well done for her for making that beautiful depiction of Mama Winnie in 2 different years. Well, continuing with that story, well, the ANC Women's League in Mpumalanga are currently holding a rally to celebrate the life of the late struggle icon Winnie Madikizela-Mandela in Mbombela. Our reporter Mweli Masilela is there and is covering this event. Mweli, quite interesting to see that the ANC Women's League is putting together this event. They've come under a lot of flack, and some saying that the ANC Women's League is not making a lot of noise around the legacy of Mama Winnie, who is a former leader of the ANC Women's League.
A very good day to you in studio and the viewers as well. Yes, we are coming to you live from the January Chair Masilela, that is the provincial offices of the ANC. The Women's League today decided to gather here today, and what they are saying, it's a prayer service for the fact that Umama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela has passed on. They are saying this event is mainly meant to honor her work, because she has been described by the speakers here, which include not only the leadership of the Women's League, but also the provincial leadership of the ANC, saying that, like echoing the words of the national leadership, as we have heard the Deputy President of the ANC, David Mabuza, yesterday, saying that Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela was a torchbearer. So it's the very same message that is being echoed here by the members of the Women's League, ANC Women's League that are attending this prayer service. But to get more on what is happening and can be expected throughout the day is the Secretary of the ANC Women's League in the province, Umam Leader. Umam Leader, if you can tell us about today's event.
Thank you very much, and greetings to our viewers. We have started actually yesterday, where we requested all our leadership in the ANC Women's League to visit churches in their various branches of various wards, to go and have prayers with other women who are conducting prayers, to ensure that it is part of our 10-day mourn. Today we are commemorating her. We are gathered here in the office because we are saying there's a lot that we have learned from Umama Winnie. A lot, like she has taught us to be brave, to be fearless, to continue to echo our voice, no matter how many times we can be silenced, as long as we are aware that our ideas and also our issues that we are pushing are true and will benefit more women and will emancipate more women. So we're gathered here today to commemorate her words, to commemorate all what she taught us as young women, because we worked with her while she was the president of the ANC. So we are saying today, as women in Mpumalanga, not only the ANC Women's League, it is led by us as the ANC Women's League, but we're not selfish, knowing that Umama Winnie was the mother of the nation. We have invited women from the spiritual lives, women from traditional leadership, women who are coming from academia, professionals, women who are even from the opposition parties. Our invitation was open for every woman in the province to come and celebrate our icon, our heroine, our lioness, who was so brave, who taught us that when we want to pursue the agenda of women, we must take fear and put it aside. We must take laziness and be selfless always.
Looking at the crop of leadership that you have from within the ranks of the ANC Women's League, would you say perhaps in a way her work is being reflected in the type of leadership we have?
Yes, I will indicate that her work is being reflected. Let me cite an example. Now we're from the 54th National Conference. As the ANC Women's League, we were vocal. There were many voices that wanted to silence us in terms of our view, in terms of who must lead the ANC, according to the resolution of the ANC Women's League in terms of our leadership. But we continued up until to the conference, meaning that braveness, that part of showing that when you are convicted, you are understanding a certain agenda. You can't leave it before you can go and pursue and ensure that you go to the end. Like now, we are happy that we managed to go with our view, and then up until conference. From there, we have also accepted that now we are going to support our President Ramaphosa. But the fact that we were fearless, that is the spirit that was showed by Winnie. Winnie could not go back when she wanted to do a thing. She could have put down all the ideas that were inside her in terms of liberating us, but she moved on up until she gave her breath.
As we wrap up, we know that there's a number of events that have been organized countrywide. What can we expect from the provincial leadership, not only the Women's League side, in terms of events to sort of remember the life of Mam Winnie?
According to the 10 days mourning plan, on Monday we're going to have a memorial service in the province, which the Women's League in the entire province will be active in supporting that ANC memorial service. So there will be a memorial service. Secondly, we'll also have activities taking place in our tertiary institutions as part of the ANC Women's League 10-day mourn. We're going to go to the Mpumalanga University and all other tertiary institutions and mobilize young women to be together and remember, and also teach them about all the values and the teachings that Mam Winnie has taught unto us.
Well, as we have heard, that is the secretary of the ANC Women's League in the province of Mpumalanga, saying that they are here being part of this prayer service to ensure that the life of Mam Winnie Mandela is being celebrated. Also highlighting that going forward, as part of the national program, they will be having a memorial service and many other events in the province to remember the life of Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. For now, it's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much there from Mweli, who's joining us all the way from Well, thank you so much there from Mweli. Certainly a story that we as SABC will continue to be focusing on. A number of memorial services that will be taking place across the country, but the official one taking place on the 11th of this month, which will be happening at Orlando Stadium, and that will be the same place where the funeral will be taking place 3 days later.
Now back to another big story of the day. The case of former President Jacob Zuma has been provisionally postponed to June the 8th in the High Court in Durban. This after both the prosecution and the defense teams requested more time to prepare for the case. Now Zuma is facing 16 counts of fraud, money laundering and racketeering related to the multi-billion rand arms deal.
It seems as if the defense is also in agreement with the submissions made on behalf of the state regarding the future conduct of this matter. For the reasons advanced by counsel for the state in agreement with the defense, this matter is adjourned to the 8th of June 2018, which is a provisional date, and the two accused before court, having been summoned to appear before this court, are released on bail. Sorry, are released on warning, rather.
Well, now let's listen to what the NPA's reasons were for postponing the case.
My Lord, in essence, the state is ready to continue the trial, is ready to recommence the trial. There are a number of preliminary issues which first have to be attended to. Firstly, is that the state has to provide the accused with copies of the docket, what is commonly referred to as the further particulars. That we have agreed with my learned friends will be done very, very shortly. Electronic copies of the docket will be provided, as is usual in these sorts of cases. And secondly, my Lord, what needs to be sorted out is the question of a trial date. As we mentioned to your Lordship in Chambers, the role planners in the DPP's office here in Durban have indicated to me that the roles are open for trial from the 12th of November. The DPP has mentioned this to the Judge President. Your Lordship is aware of it. So as far as the state is concerned, we could start the trial on the 12th of November. But there are other issues which I'll now inform your Lordship about. Firstly, by agreement between the state and our learned friends for accused numbers 1 and 2, we will ask your Lordship to postpone this matter to the 8th of June as the next provisional date, pending the matters which I will now inform your Lordship about. So there's no fight about the nature of the adjournment and the date of the adjournment. The purpose of the adjournment is twofold in principle. Firstly, in respect of accused number 1, Mr. Zuma, we've been informed by our learned friends for Mr. Zuma that he wishes to bring a review application concerning the decision to prosecute him again. And in that respect, we've been informed, and after discussions between us, that they hope to finalize the review papers by the middle of May, by the 15th of May. But we will sort that out between the parties as the time goes on. There's also been mention that there might, depending on the nature of depending on the result, there might be further applications for permanent stay, etc. Those issues are not being addressed now.
All right, I guess we have to say goodbye to the professor who's been with us throughout the morning. Thank you so much, Professor, for chatting to us.
Good to be your guest.
It's been great having you, and certainly the next step of this Zuma case is, of course, the 8th of June, but quite importantly, the date that has been set by Mr. Downer is the 15th of May, when the review application will be filed by the former President Jacob Zuma, fighting rather the decision to reinstate the 16 charges against him.
And just before I let you go, Professor, I can't help but marvel at the bravery, or should I say at the confidence that Jacob Zuma said that when he said, let the case continue if it will continue. That is telling, isn't it?
That was rather, I wonder, prophetic or not, because it's fascinating. Just for me, a final point here. In broad terms, he continues playing the procedure, the process. He's been playing that for more than 10 years now. And he professes his innocence, but in the sense of innocent until proven guilty. I was watching out for those words specifically saying, I did not do it. I did not receive anything in any untoward way. I did not benefit personally from these national processes. That was never said.
Yeah, and especially because when Zuma's legal team submitted before the Supreme Court of Appeal that the decision to drop the charges was indeed irrational, I suppose that on their part was a concession that they've run out of options. But when Zuma confidently says that the case will continue, if it will continue, I guess then it means that he's got other options. Does he though?
Oh, yeah. Procrastination, drawing things out, postponing, reviewing, appealing. He and his legal team have become experts at that. And I'm afraid we're in for more.
Well, wow. Professor Boysen, thank you so much.
Thanks again for chatting to us this morning.
Well, we've come to the end of this particular segment. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, we'll have more sports news shortly after the break.
If you ask this Irish master whiskey distiller why sometimes whiskey is spelled with an E and sometimes without, he'd say,
You're fair so good, look. It's the whole thing. They're a barking to get off in the whiskey without the E.
Yeah, didn't catch that. But if you asked us the difference, we'd tell you that every whiskey from around the world is spelled without the E, except for Irish and American whiskies.
Get a bottle of Ballantine's finest blended Scotch whiskey and a 1 litre Schweppes soda water for only $169.99 from Tops at Spa.
Let's cross over live to Griselda Lewis, who is standing by at the arbitration hearing.
But I didn't think about it at the time that people could be dying.
Let's update your sports news.
Get all the dominating stories locally and globally on Newsroom every Monday to Friday from 9 a.m.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour. Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Thanks for staying with us. We start off your sports bulletin with breaking sports news. South African swimming sensation Chad le Clos has won gold at the Commonwealth Games. Le Clos was competing in the 50-metre butterfly race. He now has won a career total of 13 medals at the Commonwealth Games. Let's take a look at highlights of the race.
Oh, le Clos was slow off the box there, beaten by Irvine alongside him as they come up here in the 50 butterfly final. As le Clos comes up stroking hard. In lane number 3, it's Coetzee, the South African teammate. Le Clos, and down there in lane number 6, Dylan Carter of Trinidad and Tobago. And through goes le Clos now. Le Clos and Coetzee. Le Clos and Coetzee. I think it's going to be Chad. Chad wins it. Le Clos takes the gold medal for South Africa. They get their first of the swimming program. Silver goes the way of Trinidad and Tobago's Dylan Carter, and Coetzee takes the bronze.
South Africa now have 2 gold medals from the Commonwealth Games, and they're in the second day of competition on Australia's Gold Coast. Let's turn our attention now to this 3-time South African Sportswoman of the Year with a disability, Kgathatso Montjane, and 2-time Grand Slam champion, Lucas Etole, are 2 of the wheelchair stars who have benefited from the wheelchair tennis programs run by the National Federation. Wheelchair tennis South Africa has overseen the birth of top players, rising talent, and top tournaments that attracted the world's top stars. But they've hit a hurdle. They've lost their long-standing sponsor, and in the process, the 6 tournaments held around the country, including the prestigious South African Open. South Africa's top-ranked women player and multiple award winner Kgathatso Montjane and top sports administrator Karen Losh from the Wheelchair Tennis South Africa Association join me. A very good morning and welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you.
So, Karen, I'm going to start with you. What's happened?
Well, we reached the end of our contract with Airports Company South Africa, who had been our sponsor for the 11 years. It has not been renewed, so as of 2017, we haven't had a game sponsor or even a sponsor that will cover any part of our programs. We get small contributions from SASCOC, which helps some of our athletes like KG and Lucas to a very minimal amount, and then also some contributions from local government, but very small.
KG, what impact is this going to have on your career and your aspirations?
Yeah, obviously for me it's taking a toll. You know, I mean, I'm in a state whereby I'm doing well in my career, and without sponsorship, it's going to be tough. I'm going to lose a lot of points if I don't play a lot of tournaments like I used to. So, but it is what it is. I mean, we just have to hang in there and keep working hard and hope something will come up.
What is the plan from Wheelchair Tennis South Africa's point of view? Because when it comes to accolades and a track record, you guys certainly have got it on a national level. So it should be easy to get sponsors, one would think.
Yes, one would think that. Yes, we have been trying to proactively promote the association and approach new people as sponsors. We haven't had anybody who's really bitten it and said, please, I'd love to sponsor a community program, or take athletes like KG, Lucas, Evans, who are the top athletes in the world, and say, let me give them the opportunity to get to the Paralympics, to reach their potential, or the guys that are coming through the system. So yes, in theory it does sound good. I think part of the big stumbling block is many people see us, like they do other disability sports federations, as a CSI. We don't fall within the sponsorship category, so we get moved from sponsorships to CSI to all kinds of places within companies. So I think that's where sort of a lot of the hurdles come, and we hope that somebody will see us and believe in our program, because it's a really good program. We've got great accolades, the athletes are doing well, so we just need somebody to believe in us and let us show them that we can put them up. Yeah, we can give them the branding, we can give them what they need.
KG, for yourself and for being a part of the Wheelchair Tennis South Africa program, you were exposed to the sport thanks to the program, and I know you personally, we've chatted on many occasions, your whole life was transformed by it, and you see young players that now may get denied that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad if this program goes down, you know. Like, I mean, we spoke in several times, you know, I told you how much I've invested my youth years in this, and it seems like the only thing I know at the moment. So for me, it's just so sad that the younger generation, you know, they're not gonna experience what we have experienced. But, you know, the main thing is just for us not to lose hope, because our younger generation, they have potential, you know. I just wish they get to be where we are. And yeah, for us, it's just to hang in there and not lose hope, because if this program has gone down, you can imagine a lot of kids with disabilities who have been part of the program. It will be so sad for them, because wheelchair tennis, it wasn't contributing just as the sport, but it was therapeutic, you know, for kids with disabilities. So it will be a huge loss for us, but at the moment, it's not a matter of losing hope. We're just having faith and hanging in there.
All right, well, we wish you guys all the best of luck. I do know that Wheelchair Tennis South Africa has made a huge impact in different communities around South Africa, not only supporting our top wheelchair tennis stars who fly the flag abroad. So thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's Karen Lasher from Wheelchair Tennis South Africa, and South Africa's top women's wheelchair tennis player, Kgathatso Montjane. And that is how we come to the end of your focus on sport here on Newsroom.
Thank you so much for your time. And I guess that brings us to a special edition of Newsroom. It has been an absolutely hectic day politically and in South African politics. We've seen President Julius Malema appearing before the Bloemfontein High Court, and that particular case was postponed to the 27th of July. And President Zuma, or former President Jacob Zuma's corruption trial being postponed to the 8th of June. Aldrin?
Well, I think I should lean over and come and tell you that I don't have a mic.
Well, Aldrin doesn't have a mic.
I don't have a mic. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me on the show. Goodbye.
Well, thank you so much for watching. Till next time then. Bye-bye.